Our Logan Municipal Council meeting. It is 5:30. We're calling this meeting into order. Our opening ceremony is by Carol Oat. Did I pronounce your last name? Great. Thank you. She's representing the Logan Tabernacle Summer Concert Series, and I'm sure other things as well. So please, if you, she will lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards.
Well, thank you. I usually don't have notes in front of me, but because I have a short amount of time, I want to make sure I get done in time. So, I am Carol Holt, and I'm the chairperson of the Logan Tabernacle Interfaith Events Committee. This group, along with the Cash Community Connections, has sponsored the Summer Noon Concerts. We have been able to meet the challenges of not having the Tabernacle available for our performance venue. Thanks to the kindness of the bishops of the 1st and 2nd Ward Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we have been able to provide a beautiful venue for these 49 concerts that we had this summer. And all those involved in the concerts have represented Cache Valley in a very professional and welcoming way. We can be proud of those who have volunteered and performed during the concerts, as they have put a positive reflection on this community and the people of Cache Valley. Many of the summer citizens attended the concerts daily, and they have said that these are the highlights of their summer time. Through the greeters, performers, and other volunteers, they have felt a true sense of welcome to this community. With the talent we have in the Valley, with singing and instrumental music, storytelling, songwriting, inspirational talks, and humor, we've been able to provide a great variety of entertainment. The performers who have participated in the past and considered crowd favorites provide a choice spot on the following year's schedule. Those who have not participated in the past are required to provide an audition video. Not all who want to be a part of these programs are chosen to perform, as we continue to up the level of performances we provide. However, for those not chosen, we hope other venues will provide them with the opportunity to continue to improve their skills. This year, we did mix things up a bit with some new variety, and from the comments we received, the crowd was pleased. It is also important to recognize that these are interfaith events. We continue to have the opening prayers provided by different religious leaders and community members of all faiths. We want this to help grow our community togetherness and make these welcoming events for all. We received cards from some of the attendees, and one card summed it up rather nicely. The person said, "I want you to know that these musical events are one of the top 10 things to do in Logan, and are one of the things that keep bringing us back each year." And it was signed to summer citizens. I don't know who wrote it or anything, but I thought it was really nice. Of the 49 concerts that we had a total of 9,491 attendees. And I know that because I took a head count at every performance. So now, the prayer. Would you like me to do that prayer? No, you can do a prayer. Have a prayer first. Okay. Would you please bow your heads for me? Father in heaven, we thank you for the privilege of coming here today, and may we be thankful for those who have willingly accepted the responsibility of representing the people of the city of Logan. May your Spirit fill this room and rest in the hearts and minds of all those who are gathered here. May they find common ground as they work through the challenges that can often divide them. May they treat each other with respect and kindness in their differences. May they always be mindful of what is the best interest for the community and those citizens they represent. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I'd just like Carol to stay there for one moment because we have just a small thank you gift for her. As the volunteer coordinator of all of those concerts that you just heard, we know that she, and members of her community, but she is the leader and she spends hours making sure that everything goes smoothly and attending those concerts. And I mean, what a wonderful thing for our community. So we just have a little small gift for her to say thank you for your service. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Next in our agenda, we have the acceptance of the minutes and the approval of the agenda for tonight.
Did you notice anything in the minutes, Amy?
Guys, I read them. I'm sorry if I find something I don't agree with, I'm going to pull it.
I will move for acceptance of the minutes and approval of the agenda for tonight.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All against, please say nay. We've accepted our minutes and approved the agenda for tonight. Next, just a reminder that our council meetings are the first and the third Tuesdays of the month at 5:30, and our next meeting will be August 15th. Now is the time for anybody in the public who would like to address the council or the mayor with comments about items that are not on the agenda for tonight. So if you have any comments about things that are not on the agenda, please come up to the mic and state your name and your place of residence, and also keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm John Beard, and I live here in Logan. I'm having an issue with Logan City, and what I do is I call tree companies to come trim a tree. It's extremely high, extremely wide over my house. And not only that, it's breaking off, the branches that do break off occasionally are almost hitting my ramp, and I need someone to have the city please approve. It's not under any telephone wires or anything like that. I need them to come out and please help me get it trimmed. So I would appreciate that if you guys can do that, because I need approval for some reason from other tree companies who will not come out and do it unless you guys approve it, because it has no telephone wires or power line by it.
Is it in the park strip?
No, it's right on your property.
Yeah, it is a park strip, and we actually had Rex, after you called Teresa, we had the city forester go out and take a look at it, and he's willing to do some pruning to the tree to maybe try and help that situation. He says it's a really nice specimen. I guess it's a black walnut. Do the walnuts ever fall on your
They fall on
ramp?
my house, they fall on my branch, they on my ramp, all over the place.
Yeah.
And I've had tree branches actually hit it, and good thing it hasn't big enough yet to break.
Yeah. And again, he says it's a pretty healthy tree, but he is going to take a look at doing some trimming of that.
It'd be well appreciated, because the wind has come by the last 2 days, and it's almost, you can tell it's going to blow over one of these when it gets good enough when it's snappy. So I would appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew Fochowski. I'm just here iterating again that words are very important and need to actually be considered as such. We have somebody that's currently in charge of giving recommendations to you guys that doesn't care about words exactly, and I'm not necessarily calling them out exactly, just more of saying it's something that needs to be considered. So just from last week's Planning Commission meeting.
Most of these should say conditions. You can say approve subject to conditions of approval, it's just semantics. I know what you're saying.
Can you get it closer to the mic?
Sorry, what was that?
Can you get it closer to the mic?
Yeah.
should say conditions. You can say approve subject to conditions of approval, it's just semantics. I know what you're saying. We love semantics. I
So, there's that one, and then also from last city council meeting as well.
So the concept plan review is part of this whole process. You all looked at the concept plan for Cashaway Marketplace. It's really important to remember this is just at this level. It's very tentative. It's here's my idea. We're going to put a little time and energy into it. What do you guys think? And really what we're looking for is feedback from the planning commission, from the council, from city staff, and really ask the question, does it make sense? Are the boundaries accurate? Are the uses appropriate? Development plans seem to make sense, location, context, things like that. What we really want to avoid is setting up another level of public hearing because there's really nothing to hear. There's an idea. They're trying to vet the idea so it's ripe enough to go back into the process of the whole project. But really there's nothing that's binding from a concept plan.
So I can understand that it's not binding or anything like that, but I think that we have a problem where we don't want to hear from the public, and that is not something that I'm in support of. So anyways, just thought I'd relay that to you. Anyways, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to address the council or the mayor? If not, we'll continue with our agenda, and now it's time for mayor and staff reports.
Again, we don't have anything specifically on the agenda, but the question has come up. We'll ask Russ Hawley to give us a brief report. You may have noticed we have a pilot program going on with bird scooters. This is a year-long pilot, so we are seeking feedback on how the public feels about that. And council members had requested just a brief update on things the public can do to help in terms of placing the scooters, what the requirements are for birds. So we'll turn the time over to Russ to give us a quick update.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, everyone. So Bird Scooters has entered into a one-year pilot program. There is 90-day written notice could terminate the pilot program. It is an exclusive scooter agreement with Bird. It's regulated under the new micromobility ordinance that was recently adopted. And the city is doing a revenue share, so 25 cents each ride is given to the city, and that's supposed to be used for future active transportation infrastructure improvements. They typically operate in bike lanes or street shoulders and on sidewalks when no other option is available. They also, on their app, say no sidewalk riding. You're supposed to park the scooters upright in a furniture zone.
Furniture zone?
A furniture zone is kind of the park strip area of a downtown that doesn't have a park strip. It has garbage cans and benches.
Oh, okay.
Benches are furniture.
I get it. Not your front,
It
not
took a
your
second.
front,
Yeah,
not your
it
front
took a second.
That's the furniture zone. Bike racks, street shoulder, no parking in front of hydrants, electrical boxes, other utilities, or blocking pedestrian, ADA, or vehicular traffic, or in front of window displays, or on private property. City reserves the right to create mandatory dismount zones. USU is not currently allowing bird scooters on campus. And then data is shared with Logan City. I actually just got some data today, and I'll show you some interesting stats in a second. And then once again, it is an exclusive agreement. We sent out an RFP. Spin and Bird showed interest, but Bird was the one that actually submitted and had the more attractive option for us. This was their official public announcement, but they launched on July 11th. They have a total of 200 scooters available. Not all of them are on the streets at a time because a certain amount are back charging. Today they have, I think, 83 available. The current rates are $1 to unlock the scooter and then 39 cents a minute thereafter. There are discount options to certain folks as well. I'll go over that. What is Bird? So this is the information that a user gets when they download the app and they start riding. It's an electric scooter. It's intended to help mobility, and it's a dockless system. So you find a scooter, you get on and you ride it, and then you end your ride and you park it in an appropriate position, but you don't have to bring it back to point A. The whole idea is it's more flexible from a transportation standpoint. They do pair well with transit as well. First and last mile is what a lot of people call that, get you to home, to this bus stop, etc. And so this is the information they provide: stay off of sidewalks, ride in bike lanes, wear a helmet, be mindful of pedestrians, park responsibly, always keep the sidewalks clear, and the ADA space is 5 foot wide, so you may see them on a wider sidewalk, parked to the edge or to the side.
Or in the middle.
Or in the middle. The app allows folks to report an issue. So Bird has one employee that is their one point of contact, that all comments that are channeled to me, I give to them. And then they have independent contractors that live in Logan that receive the instruction from the one Bird employee, and then they go out and make the adjustments. They are also in charge of recharging the scooters. And I found out last night that they don't recharge every night. They can actually monitor the battery status, and when they get so low, then they will go out and recharge it. So it might be a couple days before those scooters are charged and rebalanced or redistributed.
Can I ask a question on that previous slide? So
Yeah.
as a citizen, even if I'm not using Bird, if I can download the app and I can use that, so if I see a scooter parked in a wrong place, or
Yes.
that I can use the app to report problems.
You can.
So if I mark and it's in front of my picture window in my store, he could go on and say the scooter's in the wrong place.
Yes, I
Or
understand.
it's damaged and not functioning anymore, so.
And that would go directly to the Bird
To the Bird
employee.
person. Okay, gotcha.
Is the app only available in English, or?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I would assume it's available in other languages, as they're nationwide, they're a national company, but I can find that out. International. So they prioritize safety. They claim they're very sustainable. They like to listen to the community. They're responsive. So far, in the 3 or 4 comments that I've received and relayed to them, they have been very responsive. Marge at Beaver Mountain had some parked on her private property. We relayed the information and they were removed within a couple hours. So they've been pretty responsive. And then they also have some discount programs for certain members of the community, students. You can have flexible pricing. We haven't gotten into this, but it's available to maybe buy a month membership or things like that to make it a little more affordable for certain folks. So this is some of the data that they have shared. So currently, when I took this snapshot, there was 81 scooters deployed, and those are the little dots here. So there's one up here on Canyon Road, and there's one by the football stadium. Now this is a right-of-way. It can be on a right-of-way adjacent to campus, but you can't be riding on campus proper. Quite a few downtown. As you look at the data, most of the rides start and stop in downtown. So this shows the last 28 days, there's been 1,555 rides. And ride start is the heat map, is what they call it here. So a lot of them are starting downtown, and then they're kind of finishing downtown. This is showing some average daily rides. So on July 28th, we had a total of 110 rides. That looks like the highest day. Most of the rides are between 1 mile and 2 miles. We've had a couple that are over 3 miles. And here's a picture of the scooters parked. If you haven't already seen them, I'm sure a lot of people have seen them already. This would be a good spot to park. You've got plenty of room for a pedestrian to walk. They're out of the way. Here's another shot of 2 downtown. Where's Waldo? Where's Bird? Can you see them?
Yep,
They're
from the
behind
garbage can.
garbage can. And so, yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions.
So I know we had talked when we were looking at this, was that 2 years ago, about geofencing areas of concern.
Yes.
Is that part of this? Because I know one of the areas of concern that was raised was the cemetery.
Yes.
So I was just curious if there was any geofencing put in, meaning that if you get into that area, your scooter is no longer operable. Because I would hate for people to be like, oh, wait, something's wrong with my scooter, but they're really in a geofenced area.
Yeah, so currently USU is geofenced.
Okay.
The city reserves the right to create any additional geofences or dismount zones. And when you ride into those areas, it kind of beeps and it tells you to turn around, and then it'll eventually shut down, so you can't continue to ride in those areas. The GPS technology is pretty amazing how they can do that. And so yeah, you turn around and you go somewhere else. Right now, the city hasn't created any geofenced area, but we certainly can.
So that's something we can do without asking them permission to do it.
That's part of the contract that we entered into. They actually create the geofence. They control that tool, if you will.
And how fast can they go?
That's another thing. They can dial down the speed, but I think they go around 12 to 15 miles an hour. And then they can also dial down, maybe you won't geofence an area, but you can lower the speed in an area to 6 miles an hour, but around 10 to 15 miles an hour is the speed that they go.
That's pretty fast on the sidewalk.
It is. As part of our new micromobility ordinance, if you're on a sidewalk, you're required to yield to pedestrians, dismount if necessary. We just felt like in some cases where there's not a bike lane or where there's not a shoulder or where you have young children where it just doesn't make sense to put them out in the busy street, to put them on the sidewalk.
Yeah, I've probably seen them on the sidewalk more than in the street so far.
Yeah, depending on their app.
But when people load the app and they get on it, it does tell them that they're not supposed to ride on sidewalks. So it's people disregarding. Is that what I'm understanding, Russ?
Correct.
They're
This is the
disregarding
first thing they
instructions.
see is stay off the sidewalk. Ride in a bike lane.
You got 60 people a day is roughly your average.
Yeah.
That many rides.
I think it's a little early to draw conclusions from the data here because it's brand new. But I'd sure like to go over the data in more detail in several months, especially after the students get back from USU and a fall semester. Then it's probably worth.
What's the plan for winter? I mean,
So they pack them up and ship them away. So we won't see them over the winter, and it depends on weather, but it's roughly November 15th to March
so the
15th.
birds migrate for winter.
They fly south.
So they stopped tweeting?
No
But
tweets.
also,
Snow tires.
Migrate.
So we will get a report on issues that may come up, accidents or whatever.
I'm happy to, provide
Yeah.
reports.
It'd be fun
Fun?
in October, November.
Interesting.
Fun?
Interesting.
Well, it's,
Just have an update, not just an update,
Yeah.
I think is what he
I think that's, to get the update. I want to ride one too, but my wife won't let me.
I'm not riding one. I know two people who got on and broke arms both times, right off the bat.
I think you might have said something about this, but if people see something wrong with one, parked wrong or in the wrong place of some sort, do they have a number highly visible on them that people can call, or is it only through the app?
It's my understanding it's only through the app.
Although we have had people through the city report a problem on our website, report something that way, and then again, they get sent to Russ, and then he relays them. So it's probably faster to go directly through the app, but we do have another mechanism.
Plus, they want everybody to have the app on their phone.
Yeah.
So far, I think we've had about 3 or 4 comments come through the city portal.
Other questions?
That concludes my reports. Thank you very much, Russ.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have a council business and a planning commission update.
Yep, Planning Commission was busy last Thursday. There was a short-term rental in the Hillcrest neighborhood, 3-bedroom, owner-occupied with a basement rental. Central Milling, which Russ was kind enough to say it's the oldest business in Logan, Utah, continuously run.
The whole state.
In the whole state, sorry.
What business?
Central Milling.
Flower Mill. They're on Center Street.
So they are building a new office building. They said some of their R&D people are stuck in little corners here and there, and they'd like to collect everybody together. There was a great deal of discussion about truck traffic and how I was unaware of the fact that the trucks have to wait outside the city limits, and they're called in one at a time into the milling site to do deliveries or pickups. I knew that there was only, I'd see one, and then I'd see another, and I was like, oh, I don't know how they know when to come. Now I know. There were some at 800 North and 700 East. There were 3-unit student apartments approved called the Ballard Townhomes. That is in campus residential. South of town, 1720 South Highway 8991. Logan Entrada was approved, which is a 36-room hotel with 9,000 square feet of retail and 120 multifamily units in a 5-story building. Well, 2 5-story buildings.
What's the location on that?
1720 South Highway 8991.
Up by Cox Honey.
Yeah. There were also 2 rezones that we will see at a later date.
Thank you, Jeannie. Next in our agenda, we have our action items. Looks like today we have 1, 2, 5, 6, 7 action items. First one, have public hearing for ordinance 23-22, presented by Mike Decimo.
Okay, I'll be brief on this one. It's ordinance 23-22. This is the Plan Development Overlay Zone Code Amendment language, basically enabling language that would allow for people to apply for a plan development. And tonight, Russ will actually workshop the Cache Valley Mall project, which is kind of falling behind this and using the same language to go through the process. So we talked about this last time, and Ernesto asked for a couple of flow charts, so let me go through those to help explain the process a little bit more. This is essentially the same process Cindy would follow for any kind of land use action, other than it does have a concept plan that kind of goes with it. So the idea behind a concept plan is that an applicant throws together an idea, they look at their site, they've got an idea that doesn't quite fit in the zoning box. They put in the design approach, site features, things like that. It comes into the city, and as a plan, it's a conceptual plan. It runs through staff review. Staff looks at it, try to identify some of those big picture issues like, well, there's no sewer line there, the water line's inadequate, roads, all those kinds of things that we can help the applicant provide a better product. We did talk about some kind of notification process with the concept plan. So we will do an email distribution. We maintain a list of folks who've signed up to get emails
from the city. We'll send it out to neighboring councils, ask them to disseminate to their groups. We'll post it on our typical posting sites, Facebook, social media, things like that. So once we've done that, it'll get scheduled for a workshop with the Planning Commission. It's a non-action item. There, they'll conduct a workshop, kind of like you guys do when you do workshop items, really have back and forth between them and the applicant, figure out what the project is, does it make sense, good, bad things like that. Then it gets kicked to you guys. You do the same type of process, and then all that information should go back to the applicant. It's non-binding, but it should go back, and they should take that to heart and say, okay, let me improve my product. How do I make this a good project? So that's just the concept plan level. And then really, once that's done and ready to submit, it goes into the formal review process. So it's a type 2 review process. They would apply for a rezone to do the overlay zone on the site. They would apply for a code amendment, which would memorialize the specific language that goes with that plan development. Design review permit, which is basically the development plan. And then they may require a subdivision. So once they've done that, we'll establish hearing dates. We'll do public noticing, 300 feet mailing, legal notices, postings, web postings, social media, things like that. It goes into a formal design review or formal pre-development meetings with staff. That's where all the staff formally looks at the project. They make recommendations, apply conditions of approval to it. Then it enters into the hearing cycle with the Planning Commission. So out of that hearing process, there's 2 steps. One step is they're the final decision makers on the design review and a subdivision. So they are essentially that final land use authority. They will also then make a recommendation to this group for the rezone and the land development code amendment. And you guys are the final land use authority. So again, it's the same process, workshop, hearing, and you'll have a final decision on those rezones, and then from there they get codified or recorded. So that's really in a nutshell the process for doing it. And that's really how we do everything else, other than we now have a concept plan. That's the proposed kind of pre-process to get to the full process. So other than that, I can go through the ordinance, or happy answering questions.
So can you go back? So I know that there are people who are just curious as to where the points of contact for public comment. I know obviously people could always write to us individually at any point in time during this process, citizens, if they feel strongly about something. Planning Commission, everything goes through the Planning Commission. You don't independently contact Planning Commission members with your information. But if you could just point out, but I think it's important people understand. That's the question I've heard is, well, where does the public get to weigh in? Where do we have a voice?
Yeah, so with the concept plan, what we didn't want to do was create a third public hearing. But in this process, once somebody's applied to or given us their concept plan, at this point, after we've looked at it, we'll shoot it out for public dissemination. And that's where we're going to say, hey, give us your comments back. And we'll do that prior to the Planning Commission workshop. So,
and the comments back are via email through to the Planning Commission, correct?
Yeah, through our Planning Commission portal. And so we have a date that goes with that. So get it to us by this date, and then we can give it to them in their packet so they have those to chew on.
And that's no change from what we're doing right now.
Correct. Other than it's a workshop setting, so it's not where somebody can come up and testify.
Yes, public hearing.
It's more, hopefully it's a little more free-flowing, but it can turn a little chaotic. So we're trying to make sure it's a productive workshop between a group of decision makers and an applicant. And if there's relevant citizen input at that time that's not written or not submitted, then they can ask for it. Kind of like what you guys do, but generally it's between you and an applicant. So once this has gone through that process and they formally apply or submit, once we've established hearing dates, so we get a formal application, we make a determination that it's complete, it's ripe, it's ready to go. Once we've established hearing dates, then we send out that same kind of noticing, and folks can again send in comments. They can respond to a public notification, a mailing, legal notice, whatever. But then they have the ability at the Planning Commission stage to actually come and testify if they choose to. But they also can send us comments prior to that. And then once it goes through that process and into your process, then they can send in more comments and show up to your hearings to also testify.
Thank you.
So Mike, often, I won't say often, but regularly, Planning Commission will delay the approval of a project or delay the design review approval until they've gotten back the zone change. will this be connected so that the design review and the zone change move forward together so that they have to do both?
Good question.
Yes and no, just depends. Again, they have the final decision-making authority on the design review.
Right.
But you have the final decision on the language that codifies that specific project in design review. If that makes any sense, right? There's kind of two competing drivers of a project.
So but if we have not, if they have not completed a design review, we won't have language to do our piece.
Yeah, they have two options. One is they can approve a design review permit, say, here's what we've agreed to, here's what we approve, move it forward, or it's finally done, recommend to you guys to do the code amendment language and the overlay. Or they could say, our approval is predicated upon you adopting the overlay and the code amendment, so they can do it one of two ways. But what they really shouldn't do is say, okay, we're gonna wait, here's what we think's okay, and then pass it on to you guys to have you figure out the code amendment and the overlay and then go back to them. So they have to make a decision as an independent decision-making body, and you have to make your own decision. They're still tied together, but they ultimately you all have two different
But it seems, I understand that, but it seems to me that if they don't complete the design review prior to sending the code language and overlay to us, it is difficult for us to construct the language.
Yeah, you'll get, the short answer is they will be done with it. And the short answer is you will get the final recommended draft code language that reflects that design review. So you'll see that tonight when Russ goes through the item for Cache Valley Mall. You'll see how those two items play off of each other.
So isn't it prudent to have them complete the design review at the same time they're sending it forward?
Yeah, and like I said, they will do that, but they have the option of also withholding final approval or predicated upon you actually approving the language and the overlay. But in this case, what they've done, in the case of the mall, is they have issued a final design review permit for that project. And the language you will see reflects that final approved project and that final design review.
Well, that's the way I think it should work.
Right.
I just don't think it should be like that halfway.
No, the challenge is the process. This is the vague part of the process because you all don't have authority over the project specific.
Right.
But you do have authority over the language which is driving the project specific. So you're going to get code language that says...
Which just explains the project specific.
Well, it doesn't. It really ties that project, the nuances of the project, to an adopted set of code, or adopted set of regulations. So in the case of what you're going to see tonight on the Cache Valley Mall is in the PD process, the Planning Commission agreed with their approach to signage. They said, we're okay with this approach to signage, basically 3 signs that are this size, this location, with 1 additional sign elsewhere. And so that language is being codified in the code that you're going to see because it's different than what the land development code says for signage. And so they've made a decision on that element of the project, and they're recommending to you that you approve the code language that supports that decision.
So the code language piece of it gives the public and us and everyone more certainty that what we have approved will actually be built?
Yeah, so the way it's written is that any future element of that project, any deviation has to go back through the entire process. So basically it's a development agreement or a contract where we've agreed as a city to approve this. You as a developer's agreed to build that. This is what we need to see at the end. And again, if they want to change it, they want to move buildings, modify footprints, change occupant loads, not occupant loads, but like room counts, things like that, then they got to go back and start over.
So is that part predicated on a percentage? Or is it any change?
Well, there's a little bit of reasonableness in that if say in their development plan, they have said, we're going to put in a 151 room Hilton Hotel product, and this is what it's going to look like. But then as they've gone through it and they realize, no, it's going to be a Marriott, it's going to be 150 rooms, I think that's pretty de minimis. But if it's we're going to go from one hotel to 2 hotels, or one hotel to no hotel, then that needs to go back through the cycle, through the system.
So if they were to change footprints or anything like that, that would all have to go back through the cycle?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can you go back a slide?
Sure.
So this, no, not that one, the other, that one, there you go, thank you. So this all happens before really there's a plan submitted for approval. This is all like pre-planned stuff.
This is a pre-development type of process where everybody has a chance to say, you know, this is a really great idea, or this idea really stinks, or here's the real issue.
And this isn't going to be public, this is going to be like the staff and the developer or the
Well, the
person who owns
public
the
has an
property.
opportunity to
Is
weigh
it in
into
there?
it because they're told.
Yeah, this is staff, and it's very public in that
Yeah.
it's the planning commission will have a workshop, and you will have a workshop, and hopefully what comes out at the end is a better product that then the applicant can take and refine their proposal.
Having gone through this process without this component, this makes a lot of sense to me because there's obstacles that we ran into that we could have probably corrected beforehand, so.
Well, we did do this process with the current project. I think you were out of town.
And I'm talking about projects that I've done in the past personally,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it has to be 3 acres or more.
But there's some nuances too, where it's got to be a size, greater than a certain size. You can't fit in the zoning box. It's something that's different. Like in the case of the mall, you know, the zoning doesn't really fit what they want to do to redevelop the site.
Right.
So it does give a little more flexibility in that respect.
Thank
So
you.
to build on what Mark was saying, this right here, this process did not exist. This is what we're talking about adding, correct?
This is one element that we're adding. We don't have this process in place now, this element of the process. This is to allow for that plan development overlay type of
Yeah.
process. And this just adds more, I guess, a greater degree of scrutiny on all of our part to look at a project before it's finalized.
And in many cases, many cities have development agreements that they utilize to accomplish sometimes this same sort of objective, but it's not nearly as public.
Correct. Yeah, so look back at the Sugar Peak. Sugar Creek. Sorry.
Sugar beets.
Words matter. If you look back at that project, there was some discussions, you know, at this level about, they had a pretty good project, right? But we didn't have a zoning mechanism to get to what they wanted to do. So they went for the rezone that allowed to get the density and the type of housing structure, but yet the overall density was equivalent to NR6. So this would allow that process to unfold, but more publicly than what we did in the last one. So there was an agreement written between the attorneys and the applicant, obviously subject to what you guys thought as well, but really this would allow the public to be involved from the day one.
Well, and it should also eliminate that, because I think in the case of some projects, what happens is, it's like, here are the zones, choose a zone that'll get you what you want, but maybe that's not all what you want. And so I think that in some cases, the public panics because the zone is a certain way, it's defined as a certain way. So my hope is that this project, or this proposal, will allow us to nuance a piece of property to create a really good project that would fit in a neighborhood but doesn't fit any of our zones specifically.
Right. That's the intent.
Okay.
And again, just to confirm, these are workshop items, both in the planning commission and the council. So there is not a public hearing. There is no formal comment from the public, correct? Through this part of the process.
Well, no, there's no formal verbal comment necessarily,
Yeah,
but we do
correct,
solicit
yeah.
written comments and people to get engaged
Yeah.
early on.
There's no stand up at the podium comments.
And what we've done in the last, you know, we kind of we deviated a little bit where to put on a meeting with the Adams neighborhood to kind of talk it through, to answer questions, do a Q&A on the project for Cache Valley Mall. So I would envision we could do something like that based on the project, the neighborhood, the demands, things like that.
But that's not in the writing of the code currently.
That's correct, no. Other than we added in the noticing part of the concept plan.
With the neighborhood councils.
Yeah, with the neighborhood council, the chairs, email distribution,
Okay.
post it,
Yeah.
things like that.
Any other comments before we open it up?
Thanks for explaining, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
And I would encourage us in this process to have more meetings like they did with the Adams neighborhood. I think that that's a good way to allow people the opportunity to participate in the process.
This is a public hearing. If you would like to comment on this specific item on the agenda, please come up to the mic and state your name, your place of residence, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Dr. Gail Yost, I live here in Logan, on First East. I'm just specifically targeting the idea of neighborhood input in the middle of the bottom row. And if it's something big enough, like the mall and the changes that are going to happen, is it really just neighborhood input that we want? Wouldn't this affect most of the city, if not all of the city? And how do we manage to make sure that we get enough input from people that are really going to be impacted the most? And that's my question.
Would you like to comment on that, Mike?
Yeah, so, we meet a legal standard for noticing on all the stuff that we do, and you can always argue that it's not enough to get the word out. So at some point, we can post it, we can put a notice in the paper, we can put a notice on our Facebook page, our website, the state's posting site, we can mail noticing out, but we can't obviously reach everybody. So we can't knock on everybody's door on every project, it's just not feasible. So we do say that people, if they have an interest in local government, they need to follow along Logan City to see what's going on. But you are right, it's important to reach out as far as we can to get as much input as we can, but I think practically speaking, it's almost impossible to.
But that's one reason our neighborhood councils are so important, and that we get the information to the chairs, and hopefully they're aware, and then they have a network to spread that to people that they think may be interested. So again, those neighborhood council chairs are really a key asset to us and to their neighborhood in terms of trying to get the word out. So we appreciate their efforts when they do that. And most of our neighborhoods have a pretty active neighborhood chair at this point, so.
I also think that once upon a time, long ago, in a land far away, we used to put signs out in front of projects that were coming before Planning Commission or that were up, and I'm not so sure that I believe that that kind of sign might be appropriate for these types of projects. I don't necessarily advocate it for all, although I wouldn't mind, but.
Yeah, I mean, we have done it in the past. Wintertime it's hard because the ground's frozen and they don't go in the ground very well. We have a few stolen, and I have 2 planners that ride bikes, so it's been a little more challenging to get them out there. But yeah, we've done that extra step to try to get the word out, because people really respond when they see a survey stake, near their front yard or in their immediate area, and that really gets people's attention, but we need to do a better job with that.
So I would encourage us to do as much of that as we possibly can with respect to this, because I don't know that people read the newspaper anymore, and I don't know that they get on the website every day, and so I think that if we can, put something visual out there in the actual location, that might spur public comment as well.
My name is Marilyn Griffin, and I really wasn't going to say anything, but having seen this and feeling like the first part of it, somehow or other, we who lived there had no idea what was going on. Now, Jeannie said an important thing, the newspaper. A lot of us don't take the newspaper anymore because it doesn't have any news in it. The color of my hair should give me away that I don't do technology. So I don't go on to your website every day and see what's going on in Logan. In fact, it was my sister in Salt Lake who had to call and say, Marilyn, I think there's a parade in Logan on the 24th. So we were unaware, but we are all very concerned and love Adams neighborhood. You all know that we've had some trouble in Adams neighborhood in regards to the chair. We have a great one now. So here we are at the end of the process instead of the beginning of the process. And it's very frustrating. I've been doing this a long time. Millennial Towers, the same thing happened. And that was a long time ago. And so I really think it's important, and I appreciate what Mrs. Yost said in regards to the fact that, and really, yes, this project is in Adams neighborhood, but it's not just going to affect Adams neighborhood. It will in fact affect the entire city. And so I've met the gentlemen, I've met the people who are planning this. They're very nice. But there are some aspects that I think could be invasive and could turn out in a negative way. And I think before that happens, so we all say, oh dear, like we have done on some of the other things that have transpired, that make really sure that that's what, that things are going to go forward in a way that's going to be productive and positive for the entire city of Logan.
Thank you. And I believe you were probably referring to the other item we'll be discussing, rather than this specific one.
Good evening, I'm Joel Nelson from Adams Neighborhood. I just wanted to say, based on this, I guess this is the overlay talk that we're having right now. Yeah, is thank you for working with that. This sounds like a real opportunity for us to really kind of bind some community stuff together. Like the last few weeks, I'm in full support of really the theme of healthy community spaces. So as we've talked about that, I appreciate all that we're able to do right now. We feel a little bit late as far as a neighborhood, but any input we can do to kind of like mold this into something which we can really get behind and just continue to develop good community spaces. We're definitely in that vein right now. I want to give thanks for Councilman Tom, who met with us, the community, neighborhood community a little bit earlier, and also just all the council people in general, Jeannie and others that have really looking at this one. I wanted to put a plug in for just two more quick things. In looking at the public comment that was discussed, if we could just run a suggestion that, yes, it is hard to kind of look for things in a paper and whatnot, but I think surveys are a wonderful way to say, well, this is not just general information that we're gathering. We have a survey which kind of shows through questioning, this is what things are looking like. Could you please provide some feedback in these areas? So I'm a proponent nowadays, as we've kind of lost papers and readership directly, except for online, which you say is kind of hard to get to. I have the same druthers there, but surveys seem to do really well even electronically. So that's something which is always useful. Like say somebody contacts you with an email saying this project's going on, fire back a survey link, they start filling it in, then it's a lot more targeted data, and it's a little bit easier to communicate with somebody even like me. And then finally, just I want to put a plug in for the public. I believe it also includes small businesses. And I haven't heard much about them, but when I was visiting with folks in the mall, with my experience, I'm trying to stay in 3 minutes, they also have a concern that they are there with the public. And so if there's an outreach from the city relative to small businesses, I think that they would appreciate their input also. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to comment on this specific item on the agenda? Bring it back to the council. Any comments or questions?
I think this is a creative new modification to our process. I applaud Mike and his team for doing this, and I think Jeannie's questions were very good. And this will evolve, but I think it's a good step forward. I think it started with recognizing, for example, that the Sugar Creek could be a better process, and that kind of molded us into doing something that's not cookie cutter, just standard things. So I move that we accept this and move ahead with ordinance 2223.
23, 22.
23,
Sorry,
22.
I was going backwards. 23, 22.
I'll second.
So that, I think the one, I'm just trying to find that. So I agree, I think we just need to be cognizant that some of the steps you put in there are not necessarily specifically codified in here though. Like the notification, is it of the neighborhood councils?
Yes.
Where is, I'm missing that then.
It's on A 1727040A2.
Okay, thanks.
But I would like to, Evan, I know it's been moved and seconded.
Open for discussion.
I would like to have the word public comments received during the concept plan review process will be shared at both workshops and with the proponent. Because I think oftentimes in planning commission, I know they get the comments, but all they do is say, yep, we received your comments. And I think it's important for whoever is listening or is in the audience when something's being discussed to understand what other people have already said about it. So if they feel like, oh, they've already received that comment, that's how I feel as well, or they haven't received the way I feel, and then it gives them another opportunity as it moves to city council to make sure they get that comment in the process. Because really, otherwise, nobody knows what public comments they got, and we don't get them usually.
So you're asking for a way that
I'm asking for the last sentence to be changed, that public comments received during the concept plan review process will be shared with at both workshops.
I assume this is like a friendly amendment,
Yeah.
which I would support.
And with the proponent. I mean,
So I guess I'm just confused. So if there's like 40 emails, you want them all read into the public record?
yes.
Well, I mean,
I want them part of the conversation. I don't want.
Like read into, like, but like,
Just be
read or
just
just
be
acknowledge
attached.
that they were received? Because I guess.
Well, the problem is acknowledging that they were received is different here than it is in planning commission. Because acknowledging that they were received, we received 12 comments on this project. But that is usually all that's ever said. It's not, we received comments regarding this and this and this. And we're going to incorporate those things into our workshop discussion as well. So I don't know how to word it.
Yeah, because I'm just feeling like if there's a ton, I mean, we don't often get a lot of public comment, but if you get a 5-page letter, are you suggesting that that 5-page letter should be read as part of the workshop or the public comment period? Or is it better to say that a synopsis of the types of comments received? Or I'm not sure how feasible it is to have that be shared publicly.
Well, I mean, even if they're included in the packet that is distributed publicly, that's fine with me.
Okay.
and they are. So we have a deadline date for PC comments, because what we want to do is be respectful of their time. If they get a comment on 4 o'clock at the night of the hearing,
Right.
they really can't review it, but we just say, get it to us by noon the day before, so they have a chance to review it, digest it. But we don't want to have them read that into the record, because then we're there reading 25 comments in, but it's part of the record they get.
But it's part of the record they get, but it's not part of the record that's online.
Right, because we get them after the fact, after the whole packet's been posted.
But that's my problem with it, is that you're going to share all those comments with the proponent, but and it may inform the workshop, but we don't know whether two people commented or 42 people commented. And I think that it's important for somehow either all those comments that go to planning commission are then sent to us in our packet for our workshop or something. I feel like we need to have a little more awareness of what, in this particular case, since this is so new, we need to have some awareness of what the public is actually asking questions about when it comes to a project.
In both the first and the second phase of it?
No, just the workshop page.
Just in the workshop phase.
So let me suggest on 172704A2, the last sentence was public comments received during the concept plan review process will be shared with the proponent, planning commission, city council. Would that be sufficient for you?
Yes.
Okay.
So in regards with, it was already moved and seconded, do we need to do another motion?
It's a friendly amendment.
It's a friend, generally, we just say we would accept that amendment.
And if the second accepts it as well, then you're good.
Yeah,
All right.
I like that.
Which we
We can
both
go
have.
for a vote, all right.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Amy? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's okay. I just want to make sure it was clear that it wasn't, that every single comment needed to be read into the record, even at a workshop. That could be, but
All night.
yeah, that works.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So it's been moved and seconded with a friendly amendment, as stated by Mike DeSimone. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All against, please say nay. Ordinance 23-22 passes. Next, we have a public hearing. Thank you, Mike. We have a public hearing for Resolution 23-29 regarding electrical rate schedules.
Are you guys still fighting? I want to know, are you still fighting?
I don't. Oh, I'm angry.
I just want to know.
And I demand that he listen to me. I'm just kidding. I'm not sure what, I have the whole slideshow. I can hit some highlights if you want me to give you a quick summary of what the rate increase is.
Please do.
Okay, so in the last couple of years, we've seen just absolute increase in power rates. I'll give you one quick example. Hunter coal plant up near Price has been my favorite resource because it's inexpensive and reliable with coal. But fuel price on Hunter coal plant used to be $25 a ton, which it's been that way for a decade. We just purchased some coal for that plant because we can't get any delivered by rail. We're having difficulty getting it from the mines. But we just paid $86, and we're pretty happy just to have coal. So that's an example of why there's pressure on increased power costs. So over the last year and a half to 2 years, we should have been implementing the surcharge because we have had a shortfall between our budgeted power that we've budgeted for and the amount that it's cost us. During 2021, 2022, we just said we'll eat this out of reserves, but beginning fiscal year 2022, 2023, we will implement the surcharge, which has been on the books for a long time. So we did that. That's ranged anywhere from 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour per month for all customers to almost 5 cents per kilowatt hour for all customers. The average of that in the last, from the bills that we've got so far for our power bills, has been about 2.5 cents. So if I average the whole year, that's about what it is. The proposed rate increase is to move 2 cents into all kilowatt hours for everybody. And in theory, that should take away surcharges for most months. Maybe not all. If I had a crystal ball, I could tell you for sure. But and then on top of that, moving that 2 cents, we have proposed a 2% rate increase overall. Now that's a 2% rate increase on the average residential home is different for somebody who hardly uses any power to somebody who's got a mansion.
because the proposed rate increase on residential rates is in the fixed customer service charge. Right, we're raising it by $1.50, from $5 to $6.50. So to somebody that uses a huge amount of power, that's a small percentage of their bill. Somebody that maybe doesn't use very much, that's a larger percentage. For commercial rates, we are implementing that rate increase in just the energy portion of the charge. No demand charge changes. Also, the customer service charge goes up a little bit to try and implement an overall 2% rate increase of that class of customer. With the large industrial customers, like your hospitals, your Shrivers, your Gosners, that is being implemented by only adjusting the energy rate, so per kilowatt hour charge. And then with the university, also that is being implemented by increasing the per kilowatt hour charge. So that's kind of in a nutshell what that resolution reads in each one of those little sections of the rates. Any questions?
So the average customer will see a small increase versus the same bill a couple of years ago.
The same bill a couple of years ago, they probably will see a fairly large increase because we implemented a surcharge, right? So they saw that kind of, 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour, and your beginning tier is 9 cents. So now that's going to be, with the surcharge, that's 11 cents. Or 12 cents, I can do math.
And on an annual basis, every home will be paying $2.
I have one slide if you'd like to see it that kind of.
It'll be $18 per household increase, period, with the base rate charge increase, correct? Because it's up from $5 a month to $6.50 a month. Did I do the math right?
Let me show you.
Over the years.
Correct? Is that right?
I hope we'll illustrate that.
You're saying the annual.
The annual increase per household on their base rate.
Okay, this slide, I kind of stole
$1.50
one of the consultant slides.
a month? Right, isn't that $18?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Okay,
Don't freak me out, right?
this Logan pre-surcharge rate for a home that uses only 400 kilowatt hours, which is fairly small. This is average, and this is somebody who really uses a lot of power. This was kind of before things went crazy in the power market. With a 2.95 cent surcharge, that moves this customer's bill from $41 to $52. So they're looking at about a $10 and change rate increase.
Is that total bill or is that just consumption
That is for the month. That's total bill.
for the electrical?
Yep. And same if you're a little bigger, it went from 104 to 133, and if you're really using a lot of power, you feel that a little more. Now, this one is the proposed rate, and what this is, oh gosh, I didn't read it quick. This $54 really mostly only shows the customer surcharge from going from $5 to $6.50. Because in this rate, this proposed rate, 2 of these pennies goes into the rate, but there is still a 0.95 cent surcharge on the bill. So from this line to this line, there isn't a lot of change because in this sense, the only increase is that 2% that we talked about instead of the customer charge. Does that make sense? And this works its way, well, this shows similar bills to other entities in the area.
But they said 2 weeks ago, Rocky Mountain Power's going up.
Yeah, without getting into it, we're seeing rumblings and things that look like they're probably positioning themselves to approach the Public Service Commission for increases.
And Lehigh probably.
I don't know.
Lehigh got caught behind the 8 ball a little bit.
Some of these cities, Brigham City, for example, did not have a surcharge, and they really burned through a lot of reserves before they got one implemented. I heard of that.
Yeah, that's why there's
So
this
we're
probably a
grateful.
little, that's why there's this probably a little higher to make up for it.
Yeah, they're making up for lost.
Yeah.
So I will say that moving the 2 cents from the surcharge side into the per kilowatt hour charge, really that's just covering our energy costs. The 2% increase is to keep us, our other costs have gone up too, right? Cost of materials, cost of labor, those things have all gone up. So that's to keep us in our cash, to get us back to cash policy. And I think you all saw the slide that he suggested we do that 2% rate increase over the next 4 years, I think, so I'll be here again.
Yeah.
You mean we can't vote on all of it at once? They won't let you do that, will
We
they?
better not. That would be painful.
No, I meant the two over the time.
Oh.
They won't let us do that over time.
Well,
It's obligated.
you can, but the surcharge is there, it's a backstop, so it'll catch it either way. You don't have to do you don't have to do the 2 cents, we'll just catch it, the surcharge. But we feel like the power costs are not
Gonna come back down.
Not gonna come back down. We've enjoyed, so I've been director for almost 11 years, a little over 11 years. We've not had a rate increase since I've been here. That's a long time.
Yeah.
No rate increase. But our costs have been nice.
Steady.
Yeah. Any other comments before we open it up? No. Thank you, Mark. This is a public hearing. If you would like to comment on this specific item on the agenda, please come up to the mic and state your name, place of residence. Keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Dr. Gail Yost from Logan. I'm just wondering if there is any kind of help for those who can't pay their bills easily. For some reason or other, somebody got very sick, somebody was in an accident. What kind of help is there?
So I know the billing department will work with people on a payment plan if they get in situations. If you're talking about specifically like low-income supplemental, I only have the money I make from revenue. So if I don't get revenue, I don't have money. So I guess in that sense, no, I don't have a.
Okay, do they get referred to Bragg for their winter program?
They probably do. My department doesn't face the public like the finance department does. They're the ones that collect the bills and work with people if they need fine things. I'm sure, while Rich is shaking his head, yes, they point them.
Bragg works with them. There are several charities that work with them. Logan City doesn't have anything incorporated into our rate. That would be an additional increase if we ever did something like that. Not to mention the difficulty that a city has in trying to administer a program like that. We think Bragg is better situated, as are the charities.
Do we ever contribute to Bragg?
I don't know what their revenue sources are. I imagine they gather their revenue sources the same way we do.
Some of them are
Largely
from
government.
Well,
Federal.
well, for example, if I were to contribute to Bragg, I would need to increase rates,
Yeah.
right? Because all I have is my revenue. I can't just pull money out of my hat, so. But, no, we don't. At least in the power department.
Bragg has other governmental sources of funding. In addition, the city has contributed to some, like if there are low-income people that couldn't stay in their home because of a water heater breaking or something. We do contribute a set amount from our, let's see, does that go through the RD? I'm trying to think where the source of funds.
It's the RDA.
RDA, all right. So we do contribute a little bit of money to, not specifically utilities program, but to Bragg, and they have funds from the state.
Well, we do the Own in Logan program. We participate in that as well. It's not specifically geared toward utilities, but I think that overall, that money allows Bragg to do other things with their money to help support those utility payments and things.
Spread the funds out.
That answers my question, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gail. Anyone else that would like to comment on this item on the agenda? Bring it back to the council.
I move approval of Resolution 23-29.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded.
So I think
I always have qualms, like I know you've already said, like the 650 applies to everybody regardless of the size of their home, their income. But since the utilization, the more you use, the more you pay, and the more you use, the more you pay per unit that you use.
Right.
I'm gonna be hopeful that individuals who are at the lower socioeconomic have that lower usage because of whatever housing they're in. But it does give me a little palpitation when we're raising basic costs to our citizenry. But I understand that our expenses have gone up, our wages have gone up, the cost of buying power has gone up.
Well, I will say, Amy, if we don't have the 650, that just goes back into the rates.
Right.
And I think that it was everybody needed to share the infrastructure costs that we incur regardless of how you acquire your power.
Agreed.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. Resolution 23-29 passes.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Next on our agenda, we have a public hearing for ordinance 23-24.
We're having 3 vacations, come on.
Paul's vacation.
3 vacations in a row.
Would you like me to show them again, give you a verbal synopsis, or nothing at all? What would you?
Do you have questions, Council?
I don't have any questions. I think it's been clear.
That's pretty clear.
Yep, I don't have any questions.
For the public, if you
The
could just
public
put it
should
on
have a
there.
synopsis, maybe.
Yeah, just putting a picture of where they are up for the public.
Okay, let's do the first one.
First one is Walmart, I believe.
Yeah.
This is for their gas station.
Yeah, so it's South Walmart. Probably easiest is, we'll start here. South Walmart located on Highway 89 and 1200 South. An existing sewer easement through their property. They are building a fueling station there. Requires, call it relocation of that sewer line. So with that, they're vacating a sewer easement and dedicating an equivalent sewer easement. Shows the vacation and the dedication for that sewer easement.
Do you like the straighter line better than the crooked line?
From a sewer flowing standpoint, yes, it is better.
It appears to be better from
As
my
long as it all
point
goes
of view
downhill,
also.
then we're
Yes,
good.
that's right, okay.
We don't want to slow the flow in this regard.
Not on sewer.
Correct.
Sorry.
Any comments, any other comments before we open it up for public comment? Nope. This is a public hearing. If you would like to comment on this specific item on the agenda, please come up to the mic, state your name, your place of residence.
Joel Nelson from Adams here in Logan again, just real quick. So this looks great, even for engineering. I'm an electrical engineer, so if you ever need to point a finger at good luck. So yeah, just a quick thing is, I'm sure we're aware when we look at the pictures, there's some nice trees there. In general, those kind of provide a really good kind of like break between certain features, you could say even for commerce in the city. So if there's a chance that those could be retained as much as possible, hopefully they'll just stay where they are.
Well, I won't be able to go into that area where the trees are.
Copy that, yeah.
Yeah, it's just all
So, yeah,
grass.
just my comment there is when seeing those things, yeah, they're great. So thanks for the public comment time.
Plus, I think it's a little swampy down there.
Anyone else that would like to comment on this specific item? Bring it back to the council.
I'll move acceptance or passage of ordinance 2324. It seems pretty straightforward. I got the numbers right this time.
Yes, you did.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor,
Aye.
please say aye.
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 All against, please say nay. Ordinance 23-24 passes. Next, we have another public hearing for another vacation of easement, Ordinance 23-25.
This is, again, another easement vacation, specific public utility easements located on the corner of 100 East and 200 North, otherwise known as the location of the new Logan City Fire Station. When this area was approved as a subdivision, it was required to have public utility easements around each lot. That would be the red shaded areas. The combination of those lots to build the fire station required that we vacate those and then dedicate a new utility easement around the perimeter of the new lot. So it's a vacation of, I'm not sure if I have a combined slide, I don't. A vacation of the red and will be a dedication with their plat, not this process, but will be a dedication of Pee Wee's there.
Any comments before we?
The only thing that, the building's there, so what if we don't pass this? I mean, we got a problem. This should have been done 6 months ago, I suppose.
Probably.
Yeah.
Easy to overlook that one.
I didn't mention, I apologize, on the Walmart one with our public notification requirements, we did not receive any comments. I've received one verbal comment on this one 2 weeks ago here at this meeting, someone talked to me. And Darren received a phone call from a neighboring property asking about the process, specifically on the northwest corner of the lot. You'll notice there's a space here where there isn't. And that's because that's a generator location. And so we provide an easement around that, so it'd be contiguous. Those are the only two comments. Once they were answered, questions were answered, there weren't any concerns expressed. That's all we received.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that with us. This is a public hearing. If you'd like to comment on this specific item, please come to the mic and state your name and your place of residence. All right, we'll bring it back to the council. Your turn.
I move acceptance of ordinance 23-25, so Paul can have a vacation.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. Ordinance 23-25 passes. Last vacation for Paul. Public hearing for ordinance 23-26.
So this would be the vacation of existing or supposedly existing rights of way within the Willow Lakes subdivision. Located off of 1000 west at approximately 1100 to 1300 south, bounded on the south and west by the Logan River. Some existing rights of way that were found on maps from the late 1800s, early 1900s are being proposed to be vacated. And with the new subdivision, call it equivalent or replacement rights of way would be dedicated to keep the public rights of way continuous throughout there with the subdivision. I don't know if there's any specific questions with it or if you want to see those slides again, but that's the very much Reader's Digest version.
Somebody was planning way ahead for that, weren't they?
Yes.
1800s.
You go back to the other slide. So that's what was planned back in the 1800s.
That's our best representation of it, yes.
That's your grid.
And to give you a little more information, there are, the developer has done more research and shown that there's likely, in their legal opinion, state statutes that would have already eliminated those rights of way due to timing of annexations and with the city. Our recommendation and their desire was to continue with this vacation just to make sure there
Seal
weren't
the
any
deal.
questions with that.
Seal the deal.
Yeah.
Makes sense, Paul.
Any other comments before we head up? This is a public hearing. If you'd like to comment on this specific item on the agenda, please come up to the mic, state your name and your place of residence. We'll bring it back to the council.
I'll move acceptance of ordinance 2326.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Please say aye. Aye. You need
How
to,
that little pause there, though, you know, so.
I'll just say it a little faster.
Fight over
I should just say it in Spanish. And then,
You could do that too.
okay, see.
Yeah. We'll do C for you.
So let's do this again. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. Ordinance 23-26 passes. Thank you, Paul. Next, we have a public hearing regarding the COG, the application to the Council of Governments, the funding cycle for 2023.
Yes, thank you, Council. Every year, the Cache County Council of Governments distributes sales tax revenue to local municipalities and the county for road improvement projects. A requirement is that we hold a public hearing before any entity applies for this funding. There's no formal vote from the council required, but just an opportunity for the public to comment on our proposed project. Here's a little bit of background on the COG. I'll be honest, this is a copy and paste from last year's slide. So same information, kind of gives you, it's from sales tax from the county. This year we're looking at 6 to 7 million for countywide projects, and we have to have a public hearing. This year, we would propose to apply for some grant funding for our project at 1000 North and 200 West. It's the corridor between Main Street and 200 West. The biggest, I guess, part of this project is a new traffic signal at 10th North, 2nd West. You'll notice this project has been on our CIP, our capital plans, for a number of years. And we had hoped to have this project done by now. We've been delayed due to property has been our biggest delay. You see up there, we finally had the last property closing this last week.
Yay.
It's been 3 years of property. So we are ready to begin construction on this project. Hopefully we can get some utility work, some underground work, maybe outside the roads started this winter, with full construction starting next spring. You'll see there, we do have a previous COG award for this project. In 2019, we received $2.4 million for this project. We're asking for more. In the last 3 to 4 years, you've seen citywide project costs have gone up, and we're looking at around a $2 million funding deficit right now on this project. We think an ask of about 1.5 million combined with some tweaks to the project scope will put us right in line to be able to fund this fully. So we're tentatively, we haven't finalized it, but tentatively planning on asking for about 1.5 million from the COG this year.
Then the city always has to provide a match, and the more match you provide, that sometimes tends to help your project.
Yes, it's a minimum of 7%. We typically greatly exceed that match percentage. That's kind of all the information I had. If you had any other questions, like I said, we just need to hold a public hearing for this.
All right, so we are not voting on this?
No, no votes required.
All right, any?
The lines are not real specific there, but how close are we getting to the front steps of Lexington Village on the north side?
I don't know an exact footage. I know that we've had a lot of negotiation, and that's part of this last 3 years has been negotiating exactly what that right-of-way line looks like and what the improvements are to help the residents feel So that right-of-way line moving closer to the houses is okay. So I don't know the exact number, but I know we've worked with them a lot to get to a spot where we're comfortable and they are comfortable with the project going forward. I can give you the exact number if you'd like.
And again, the COG just wants to know that, you know, the government, the elected officials are aware of the project, supportive of the project.
What's needed for sure.
Yeah.
So were there other projects besides this that were evaluated to present to COG or?
Yeah, every year we look at our CIP list that council approves to see what's upcoming, what are our budget needs. So every project on that CIP list was looked at. This was our biggest, most immediate need that we felt would make the biggest help to our budgets.
And there are legislative guidelines that sort of prioritize the funding. So regional significance, capacity, I can't remember all the other.
And I think that intersection has been warranted for some 20 years.
Yes.
So it'd be nice to get it done. These guys, again, the last 3 years, they've worked really hard to solve a lot of logistical hurdles.
And this includes something on the east side of Maine as well, or is this just right, doesn't it?
Yeah, this map cut it off, but we go back basically to the PetSmart entrance.
Okay.
The reason for that is just to make it all contiguous, so it's not just an abrupt change, but so it'll slowly taper to Main Street. UDOT's helping us with some modifications at the intersection of Main, and then that corridor west to 200, 225 west, because again, want to taper that out of the intersection at 200 west.
Any other questions before we open it up? All right, this is a public hearing. If you'd like to comment on this item on the agenda, please come up to the mic, state your name and your place of residence.
My name is Cassandra Erickson. I live in Nibley, but I'm excited to see this. My main questions were, what kind of improvements are going to be made for walkability and pedestrians that are using the area? And also that intersection there on 2nd West is kind of hairy. So like what kind of things are being done there to improve it?
Good question.
Thank you, good question, yes.
So as far as walkability, we will be installing sidewalks on every part of the project. A challenge we've had, like Tommy mentioned, was how much we could fit in that right of way without encroaching on people's front doorsteps. So we have had to limit what that cross section is. So these are going to be sidewalks adjacent to the curb and gutter that they aren't trail width. They're closer to that 5 to 6 foot width. As far as the intersection at 2nd West and 10th North, that'll be a traffic light with full movement, so a lane for each left turn, straight through and right, with a signal controlling it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to see a wider sidewalk there. That would be really nice, even if it is curb tight. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to comment on this item on the agenda? Bring it back to the council.
No action. We're done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How's my parking lot?
It's coming. Grand Mayor next.
Next in our agenda, we have a public hearing for Resolution 23-30. Lots of budget items.
These are 11 separate grants, 4 of which are RAPS grants we received from the county, totaling approximately $625,000. The largest portion of that to be used for the park on the west side of the Recreation Complex Park. In addition, we received a $750,000 grant from the state of Utah for that same purpose. And then there are several other smaller grants, most of them we receive each year. I can speak to them if there are any questions, otherwise, that's it.
Comments? All right, we'll open it up for public comment. If you'd like to come up to the mic and state your name, place of residence to comment on this specific item, this is now the time. Now we'll bring it back to the council.
I have a question, I'm so sorry. My name's Erin Bennett, I'm from Logan, live on Park Avenue. So the park they're talking about, is that the park they're gonna build over the old landfill, the recreation area? And are there like dangers to building a park on top of a landfill, like methane release? Has any sort of, assessment been done of the impact of that on the community? And it feels like it would be an awful waste of resources to allocate funds to a park that turns out to be toxic.
You're not allowed to build structures over a landfill or the landfill protection zone, which is adjacent. There's a total of about 200 acres. But again, there are certain very specific requirements that come from the EPA in terms of covering the landfill. Again, there will be some monitoring done for methane. But again, given our soil in Utah, there isn't a tremendous amount. We've looked at, do you harness the methane to try and produce energy? But there really isn't enough to do that. So we do, again, we've been putting money aside in our environmental fund for eventual closure costs. Even with the new landfill we've created, we're already setting aside money for the eventual closure, which has to be done in accordance with standards. So we do take care of that. And again, it is an accepted thing to put recreational property in that location. So we thought that was a good use of the property.
And has any testing been done on the property for toxicity or?
Yeah, I think periodically they do have to test just as part of their standard permit. They have to provide the environmental department.
The environmental department of Logan City.
Yeah.
So testing has been done.
Yeah, on a regular basis and submitted to the State Department of Environmental Quality.
Okay, so we're not going to invest a bunch of tax dollars into like a big pile of garbage. Okay, cool. Thank you.
We've already done that.
What?
We've already done that, small landfill, so.
Anyone else that would like to comment on this specific item? All right, we'll bring it back to the council.
Move acceptance of resolution 23-30.
I'll second. Oh, Tom beat you.
Tom beat me.
I'll second.
You got it, Tom. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. Resolution 23-30 passes. Our last action item for tonight is ordinance 23-23. Kirk?
Okay, welcome. I'm ready. I can go through the presentation if you'd like again, or if you just want to ask questions. If it's helpful, I can move through the presentation quickly.
So all of this particular ordinance is just adopting the boundaries of the project area, is that correct?
Actually, it's more than that. It's the project area plan. So basically, this contains the strategic objectives of what we hope to accomplish through the project area plan. So it does include the boundaries. It also describes, the manner of development, the impact on population densities, streets, traffic. In broad form, it talks about the expenditures that are, proposed to be made. So just various elements of the plan.
Thank you.
This is what we adopted at the redevelopment agency.
Correct. Yeah.
Would you guys like to see the presentation?
I don't need to see it, but the public may.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just touch on the highlights here. So what you see there is the boundary that Jeannie was referring to that shows the boundaries of the project area. Pretty much centered around the Cache Valley Mall there on the top or the north, and then extending down to the lower part, which fronts 1000 North And then the east-west boundaries are between Main and 200 East, more so on the north end, obviously, around the mall, less so on the southern end by the middle school.
And the other parts that are not included in that great big super block are Home Depot, PetSmart, things that have already been redeveloped, correct?
Correct. Okay, why was this area selected? It's underdeveloped, buildings need reinvestment, it's economically underperforming, it's a prime commercial residential location with proximity to multiple services, including healthcare, education, the university, and obviously commercial services. And we have a emerging public-private partnership that's coming into place to potentially improve the area. And this is what I spoke on, Jeannie, after you asked me your question. Some of the plan elements include boundaries, land uses, layout of principal streets, population densities, building intensities, and development and design standards. So assumed or presumed in the project area plan would be financial assistance from the public sector to include permit and fee waivers, tax increment financing, and redevelopment agency reserves. Reimbursed costs, the purpose or really the justification for those public expenditures. Some of the reasons include extensive demolition, the Cache Valley Mall, obviously, public infrastructure that would need to be put in, on-site upgrades, and potentially into the future on some undeveloped ground, maybe some land coming down. So projected agency expenditures, $13 million over 20 years. It's actually $13.5 million in that there's $500,000 of existing affordable housing reserves that are also in the budget, which you'll see later as part of the redevelopment agency. And all of this, of course, is just subject to taxing entity interlocal agreements. By adopting, approving the project area plan, it commits no financial reserves of any kind from the public sector. It's just basically an agreement of the intended strategic objectives of what the plan hopes to accomplish. Some of the public benefits, significantly more investment into this area, high quality design as part of the redevelopment, pedestrian enhancements, traffic circulation enhancements, strengthening of a key commercial area, direct, indirect, and induced economic benefits, strengthening of the tax base, and an increase to the affordable moderate housing supply. That number is a little different than the budget, but I'll touch on it. Well, I'll touch on it now. Tax base impact that we had in there was an estimated, underlying an estimated $900,000 a year upon the expiration of the project area. That, as you'll see in the budget, is $735,000 per year. And really the evolving nature of that number has been as we've looked at that southern end of the project area, the city has about 2 acres there that is owned by the city, which could perhaps be developed into a public park. I mean, that is yet to be decided, but it has been talked about. So in the budget, that's reflecting that, which just really lowered that capital investment, but would be seen as a great amenity, not just for the Cache Valley Marketplace project, but the neighborhood and the city as a whole. So I mean, that's both the budget and particularly the project area plan are estimates really at this point.
Well, anything we put into a park goes out of taxing anyway. So it's not taxed anymore.
Correct.
So.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a brief run through, but if you have specific questions, I'm happy to address them.
The tax base impact, that's for the portion that Logan City receives?
That's comprehensive, so that'd be all 3 taxing entities combined. And when I show you the budget later, I can give you I can give you I've got it right here. So Logan City's portion would be an additional, and I say additional because Logan City is already receiving property tax from this project area, but an additional $90,000 per year. Obviously, the Logan City School District representing about 75 cents on the dollar. I mean, their number is an additional $550,000 per year. But for the city, keep in mind that, I mean, all of this proposed development, or much of it includes commercial aspects, so there would be significant contributions to the tax base in form of sales tax.
Any other questions for Kirk? We don't have a public hearing on this, but we still need to vote to adopt this, correct?
Are you looking for a motion?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm looking for a motion.
I move acceptance for ordinance 23-23.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. Ordinance 23-23 is adopted. That's it for our action items for tonight. We do have a few workshop items. First, we have a rezone, ordinance 23-27. Russ, please walk us through it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have two rezones for you tonight. The first is palatial living storage rezone. This is an acre just southwest of the palatial living mobile home park. This is former Logan City Mayor Wally Nichols' development. Developed and lived there for numerous years. This piece was planned and incorporated into the project as a storage area and a caretaker area. Actually parked a caboose here, and the caretaker lived in the caboose, and folks that had boats and trailers would park their stuff here. Well, when Wally passed away a few years ago, his heirs went to sell the property, and the new owner didn't want to buy that, and it was actually a separate fee title piece of property. They didn't purchase it as part of the palatial living mobile home park, and subsequently it's been bought and sold, I think, twice, and the new owners, well, what do we do with it? Because it's actually zoned mobile home, and our code doesn't allow new mobile homes. So the permitted established legal use of storage associated with the mobile home could continue, but where they're not the same owner, and I just don't think the demand was there, and so the current property owner applied to change the zone and redevelop it. No development plans have been proposed at this time, but they are asking for MR9. They actually...
It seems like an island.
Yes, it is an island. So here is the current zoning. You've got the MH is the orange. The IP industrial zoning is the purple. And then NR6 to the south and to the east. And then you've got commercial kind of kitty corner. It's a piece of property that's surrounded by a lot of different uses. There's a paint manufacturing shop right next to it. You've got mobile homes on the other side. Even though the zoning is NR6 to the south, there's a couple of fourplexes directly south. There's a handful of homes along 600, and then obviously there's more homes the farther east you go. And then the storage units are kitty corner in that commercial area off 6th and 6th.
The site is 1 acre.
The site is 1 acre almost exactly. The FLUP, or the future land use map, calls this out. I mean, it anticipates the mobile home park redeveloping at some point. I'm not sure if that will happen anytime soon. But then it basically draws the line on 6th West. And there's a handful of industrial uses that are east of 6th West. So this may be quite a ways into the future before this is realized. This is the request, is MR9. They actually came to the Planning Commission for MR12, and we had about a half dozen of the neighbors show up. And there was quite a bit of back and forth. They felt like MR12 was just too dense. The applicant didn't feel like single-family homes were appropriate here. Ultimately, the Planning Commission said, or actually the applicant basically volunteered and said, well, I'll resubmit for MR9. The Planning Commission
What was his original?
MR12.
Okay.
The Planning Commission was receptive to that, and they voted for a recommendation of approval unanimously, 6-0. But here's the site. So there was one storage building constructed. And then you can see here, this is from a few years ago, but over the years they've piled up some trailers or accessory structures, buildings here. The caboose was parked right here. That's rolled away. And then this is like an auto salvage or impound yard, sorry. There's an interior decorator here, and then Logan Waters here. These are the fourplexes that I mentioned, and then this is the edge of the mobile home park.
And the mobile home park goes on top of too, right?
Yeah.
Yes, there's one or two trailers, yes, right here. And then this is the paint manufacturing facility here, just right outside of the screen. So a very eclectic group of land uses around this site. We have one comment for
okay, go ahead.
One person showed up at the last Planning Commission meeting, and they were concerned about snow removal. But the other neighbors seem to be okay with MR9. Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Well, it's an odd shape. You've got a square thing, but it's kind of in a trapezoidal, you know, the road. So is that really the shape, or is that just kind of a schematic?
That is really the shape. There's a little alley that provides access here, but it's only 18 feet wide. And then there's a little dead-end alley here. Really, the best way to access the property is the 500 West Street, which is a private street associated with palatial living.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, that's always been private.
I know, but how do you develop that?
So with the purchase of the property came access agreements and easements that provide access via 500 West.
So they would have access to the through two means there. Okay.
They would. And if they redevelop it, they may reconfigure those driveways and, you know, put one here. I'm not sure if the storage facility would remain or not, but an MR9 could yield a total of 9 units, whether that's configured in 3 triplexes or a 4-plex and a 5-plex.
But they won't be able to use the alley, right?
No. No, current standards and emergency vehicle requirements would not allow them to solely use that alley. I would assume that may be sold to the neighbors eventually. I don't know.
So remind me what the height limit is for MR9.
MR9 is the same as NR6. It's 35 feet, 2, maybe 3 stories.
Thanks. So those fourplexes are zoned NR6?
Yes. In 2007, the city downzoned quite a bit of land in the Bridger neighborhood, and so we have a lot of multifamily structures that are zoned NR6. They're grandfathered, they're legal.
Legally existing, non-conforming use.
Thank you.
It's one of my favorite sets of words.
So even though on the zoning map it shows NR6, it's really, the existing structure is MR, that's less than MR9,
It's a big mixed bag of all kinds of stuff in there, so I would assume that's why the Planning Commission was okay with MR9, because it's just a little conglomeration of everything.
But it just seems odd to have a little square MR9.
Yeah.
It really does. Stuck in the middle of other stuff that's supposed to be NR6 in the long-range plan.
Yeah. Some people call this spot zoning. Spot zoning is legal, though. So you can spot zone.
Yeah.
And there's
It's appropriate.
four fourplexes there, right, between the hat and.
Yeah, so this is about 2 acres and there's 4 fourplexes here. These are single-family homes and they're actually built on a foundation, they're permanent homes. And then this is a church, it's a Baptist church, and then home, and then these are all homes. But all this orange is mobile homes of various shapes and sizes.
What kind of density is there in the mobile home?
So mobile home is built about 7 units per acre, which is pretty close to our single family of NR6. The odd thing about mobile home is they don't own any of the property. It's all one big property, and then they lease the pad site, or the little piece of concrete that you will your home on. And so density is more of a gross than a individual lot. They don't have setbacks like a normal NR6 would have. They have fire separation minimums, but you can put the trailers quite close to one another.
What's the closest MR9 to that spot?
That's a great question. I would have to zoom back out. We have about 2.5 blocks to the east. We have MR9 along 600 North and 2nd West. So this is 5th West on 2nd West. We have MR9.
So if the mobile home park disappeared, could there be an argument made by a new owner that MR9 is appropriate because it borders MR9?
They certainly could make that argument. And whether or not it's appropriate is a great question. The way the mobile home code reads now is trailers can come and go. And so as long as they don't exceed the original trailer park capacity, then they're free to kind of bring trailers as they come and go. You just can't exceed those original permit maximums. If it redevelops, that means every trailer is going to be moved out. And honestly, in the last several years, the trend is more trailers moving in. This park is now at capacity. The park over here on 4th North and about 6th West, just west of the tracks, it was about 50% capacity about 5 or 6, 7 years ago, and now it's near 100%. And so we're seeing a lot of homes moving in and refilling up these parks.
Where it's adjacent to industrial, that kind of throws a different view into it, I think. I don't think anybody wants a single-family home with an industrial park on the backside, but
the flip has all that industrial park going to NR6 and flip, which is interesting. So up to 600 is all NR6
if somebody
now.
comes in and decides that's a good place for an industrial spot.
How many parcels is the mobile home park?
It's 2 because the street kind of bisects it there, but.
So in theory, the owner could sell a couple of the parcels of the mobile home?
There's only 2, yeah, because they own all the ground collectively. The mobile home park owns all the ground.
Including the roads.
Including the roads?
I wouldn't say collectively. It's the park owner that owns the land.
Yeah, well, I meant collectively in like all the pieces they own, not.
Okay.
And then everybody owns their own trailer, but they rent the place where the trailer lives.
Right. Yeah, but to Amy's comment, could part of it be sold and be redeveloped if the new owner wanted to?
They get subdivided, I would assume.
Yes.
So it's what the MH is all one parcel, or is it 2 parcels?
It's multiple parcels.
It's multiple parcels.
I'll say this, I was familiar with the owner before he passed away, and it was very successful. Financially, that's a very healthy economic parcel. So I doubt if it's going to go away unless there's some other big thing happening.
It was always managed pretty well.
It was. Required them to cut the grass every week.
Yeah, there were lots of rules.
No cats.
No cats.
Until the caretaker moved out of the caboose.
Yeah, well, it made people be respectful to each other, and so people were highly desirable to use that property.
All right. Thank you, Ross. Let's go on to the next workshop item. Another rezone and code amendment for the Cache Valley Marketplace Ordinance 23-28.
Okay, thank you. So this is the Cache Valley Marketplace project. It's just under 30 acres, and it's the mall site. Most of the pad sites around the exterior, especially on the west side, have been subdivided off, and they're no longer part of the mall project site. The current zone is commercial. The future land use plan is also commercial. And they are asking for commercial with PD overlay. So this is exactly what Mike was talking about just a few short minutes ago. So they have gone through the concept phase process. They've gone through the design review and subdivision process, as well as the code amendment and PD overlay recommendation process. So this is similar to a project that wants to be subdivided and rezoned all in one package in one project. It goes to Planning Commission, it gets final approval on the subdivision portion of the project, but then comes to you for the legislative rezone or code amendment. And that's what this is. And this would be, I guess, the final step in the entitlement process. If they are granted approvals here for the code amendment and the rezone, their next step would be file their final plat and file a building permit, to start the demolition and start the construction. So this is the last step of the entitlement process. I'm going to focus more on the project and not so much the PD process, as Mike's already gone over that. So again, just under 30 acres, about 28. It's a $200 million project plus. The key component of the project is a 150,000 square foot big box retailer. 346 multifamily units. These are in 4 freestanding buildings. There's a hotel / 21,000 square foot commercial building, so that's kind of a mixed use building there. New kind of public right-of-way that goes through the project, provides better pedestrian walkability through the project site, as it is basically a super block right now. 6-lot subdivision involves 28 acres. Planned unit area is about 25. Here's the site plan that's been proposed. So the big box retailer is this big red rectangle here, closest to 1400 North. This is that kind of mixed use where you have the hotel in the purple, and then the cross hatching is the retail building. The hotel kind of overlaps and goes on the second and upper floors there. All the yellow boxes that you see here in the L and rectangle shapes are the proposed multifamily buildings. They're 4-story in height. And then this is a row of freestanding garages. They're a 1-story garage unit that has doors that open to the east, and they're accessed via the residence here. This area between here is more utilitarian. It's the loading docks, and it's the truck access behind the big box. This area is a new surface parking lot associated with the big box, and then surface parking here, and here associated with those adjacent buildings. This is the public access easement that's hatched in green with the associated sidewalks, angled parking along that. The remainder of the area is 90-degree parking. That's the project site plan in general. Here's the renderings that the Planning Commission looked at. So the Planning Commission did approve the design review and subdivision with amended conditions. Those are an amended setback on 200 East, that increased from 10 to 15, and then a larger open space area or gathering area near the residential buildings 3 and 4, which are also on 2nd East. I'll show you those changes graphically in just a second. This is hovering above the Olive Garden, looking north and east. This is out on Main Street, kind of looking to the big box. This is on Main Street as well, looking straight onto the big box, as well as the hotel/retail space there. 4 different views, kind of looking from different angles. There's some multifamily here. This is the general design and layout of the multifamily buildings. Here's a shot of the kind of the storefronts of the retail area. This is a little top lot near one of the multifamily structures. Here's the dog park. This is that area behind the big box. So this is kind of loading dock, back of house. These are the garages. The murals are new. I'm not sure if those are going to be the exact design. Probably a placeholder, because it looks like the same thing repeated. But those are the little one-story garages. This space is about 40 feet wide, just for context and give you an idea for scale. Here's the pool area between buildings 3 and 4, multifamily building 3 and 4. Here are the elevations that the Planning Commission reviewed and approved that show materials, fenestration, articulation. Here are the hotel retail building elevations showing materials, fenestration, articulation, as well as multifamily. They share a similar color and material palette.
So is the hotel plan to have a restaurant in it, or is it just a hotel? Because I'm looking at where deliveries would come to the hotel in that drawing.
Yeah, good question. I think that's kind of to be determined. This is essentially the hotel front door, if you will. I think they're planning a little kind of pull-off, kind of pick-up, drop-off area. It might depend on the brand of hotel that they choose. They certainly have the space on that ground floor to do a restaurant. But that's a good question. I think it's to be determined. Right around the corner are all these storefronts, which could easily be a restaurant that's directly adjacent or easily accessible.
The same delivery would all come through the front of those small commercials?
No, I think the way the layout, let me go back really quick.
Sorry, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to figure out truck.
They have kind of back of house in this area here, which,
For the hotel?
yeah, which would probably be more bulk delivery options here. You know, sometimes retail will plan their deliveries at, 5 in the morning. Mark knows that.
No, 5 in the morning.
Or, at odd times where traffic's not going to be a problem. So in those cases, they could maybe park a truck here and load and unload.
But they're like, the front is facing west and the whole back is not public access. The whole west side of those little commercial, they run west to east?
Correct.
Okay.
They face west. This is a backdoor option.
Okay. So food deliveries would come in that way.
Yeah, if you've got a bigger truck, this is going to be a trickier
That's a little
maneuver.
tight.
Um,
Thank you. Sorry.
welcome.
Sorry.
No problem.
You talked about green space for children to play. I don't see where that is, other than the pool.
I'll show you that just in the next map.
And they also, after the planning commission's requirement that they add additional green space, I know they have the architects working on renderings to bring back, kind of at the next step to show people.
Good.
Yes, and I just talked to the applicant this afternoon. He will have those renderings for the August 15th meeting for you to review. This shows that amended setback on that east side along 200 North. This shows the different parking areas. They are about 200 stalls above parking, but they do meet all of the individual parking requirements for each use in each space. That's the breakdown. If you want me to go over that more, I'm happy to. Access is provided via 8 different driveway locations here. Main Street, 1400, 1250, and 200 are all access points. Transit, this was discussed at the concept phase by the City Council. So as part of the Planning Commission design review permit, they're required to upgrade the transit stop here, which they determined that this was the higher use. This is the green and blue line loop, which does have the higher ridership than the 200 East stop. The 200 East stop is still there and still available, and folks can utilize that. But the commission required some upgrades here, as well as better pedestrian connectivity to get you to these storefronts. Better crossings were also required by the commission, and in some cases some raised grade crossings so that cars actually have to slow down and drive over the hump. So this is very pedestrian oriented in some of these areas. But that was a transit question. Let's see, this is the area that the Planning Commission wanted additional gathering space. So they discussed this space quite at length at Planning Commission. And this plan, which again, this is conceptual, their final landscaping plan will have accurate tree counts and accurate open space numbers. But they show a bunch of trees here, and this is where that dog park was. The rendering of the little tot lot was over here against this building. This is about 40 feet wide, which is fairly wide. But the context of that site, again, when you're right next to a loading dock, you're at the back of a big box, it's not the most pleasant gathering spot. Plus, all the residents would have to go out around the garages to get there. So it just didn't feel like a good location. And so the Planning Commission felt like this is better here. So make some adjustments to the layout to increase open space in front of these, or I guess on the west side of these buildings. And then the pool area is right here. So it could actually be dovetailed in with the pool area and better utilized. And so that's what the applicant's going to be working on. You'll see some renderings of that next meeting. Last but not least was signage. So they were looking to change some of the current sign code rules to allow for some better exposure. Because of the size of this, they were actually allowed quite a few, about a half dozen signs, but they felt we could consolidate to 3, but can we get a little bit bigger? And so they're proposing 11-foot tall signs with 108 square feet. Our current code is 8 feet tall at 72 square feet. But this shows some renderings of what they might do. Anchor, tenant.
If they were to do all the signs that the current sign code required, how many square feet of sign would they end up with?
Well, they could do 6 total signs at 72 square feet. Can't do that in my head.
450, 450,
450?
give or take a little.
450 versus 3 at 108, which is a little over 300.
Okay, that's what I was after was.
Yeah, it's a lower square footage. Now, in addition to these signs, the code does allow what we call directional signs. So you'll probably see a little arrow with the big box logo, and it's, turn here. It won't necessarily be advertising, it's more directional or in nature.
Given that this area is already zoned commercial, what part of this plan could they not do?
Oh, so good question. Some of the reasons why the PD was pursued here, the freestanding residential would not be allowed in the commercial zone.
Okay.
The taller buildings would not be allowed in the commercial zone.
But they could still do a bunch of residential. They would just
They
have to.
could
It
still
would have
do-
to have commercial at the bottom.
Commercial on the bottom.
Yeah,
Right.
ground floor commercial.
Okay.
They're sitting at about around 15 units per acre, overall.
Overall.
They could do more than that with the, you can go up to 30.
Yeah.
Setbacks changed a little bit, signage changed a little bit. Those are the main changes in the PD overlay. Happy to go
So
over
technically
those.
with commercial, they could do 30 units per acre. Is that what you just said?
They could.
Okay,
If they had commercial on the lower floor.
yeah.
And our mixed use, we had put that commercial had to be on
Right.
the arterial street, so all of 200, even under mixed use, would have had to have commercial underneath it.
Yes, correct. The mixed-use zone had some issues as well. Even though they met the minimum square footage for commercial, there was still some issues with frontage. I'm happy to go over more if you'd like. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did recommend approval for the PD code amendment and for the overlay rezone, and they voted unanimously as well, 6-0. We've received a lot of public comment over the course of this project. It's going on 3 months now. We held the neighborhood meeting with the Adams. There's a lot in favor and there's a lot opposed, depending on who you ask and what perspective they're going or looking through. What else? I think that covers most of my bases.
So would it be possible to see those public comments that were sent? As Jeannie raised that point earlier, would it be possible to get copies of the public comment that was sent to the Planning Commission?
Yes. Let me look through
In
here and
advance
see.
of our meeting?
We have all the verbal comments from the meetings in the minutes.
Yeah, I saw that.
And those are in the packet. I can make sure you get the
Any
submitted email or letter comments that we got.
That would be great.
And I will put them in your next packet.
Thanks.
I know they're already scanned.
Yes, they are.
And do most of those comments relate to the rezone, or do they relate to the design? Or is there a mixed bag?
It's mixed. I mean, most people will just address the project.
Okay.
I like the project, but traffic's a nightmare. They don't really get into the nuance of PD overlay or rezone or a code amendment.
Because obviously we're not approving design, we're just approving the rezone.
You were approving the overlay rezone and the code amendment. But as Mike explained, this code amendment is a little more attached than other code amendments. It is specific to this parcel. It is specific to this project. It can't be used anywhere else. And if the code language changes significantly enough, as you said, if it means different footprints or different layouts, then the project changes and it has to start over and go back through design review and all those kind of things. So this is not a typical code amendment, at least in my definition of typical, because I've never done one like this before. But there's a first for everyone.
But whereas the Planning Commission could say, move this green space there, that's not within our purview to say, or is it?
Well, that's one of their conditions. So their amended conditions is add the setback to go from 10 to 15, and then add the 25 feet of additional open space. Let me go here. Add additional 25 feet of open space here. And that has already been changed in the PD overlay language.
Okay.
And so you're implementing that, if
Okay.
you will.
So this is a different thing than we've ever usually
Right.
been able to do because we've never had
It's a first for you,
that
too.
level of,
So
okay.
where do those conditions appear?
They are in the PD section 17.27A.
I know, but most of these just sound like regular conditions. They don't sound
Special.
So special would be the 27A080, development standards residential component. And then if you look down on number 2, it says building 3 and 4 needs a 15-foot setback. So that's where it's.
But it doesn't say anything about moving green space.
Maybe the condition of approval of the design review.
That's not Jody.
Is that one in the conditions? Yeah, it's a little bit of a combination because as I was talking with Mike earlier, the condition for the bus stop is in the design review permit, or the condition for the raised crosswalk is in the design review. So it might be a bit of both. It might be in the PD overlay. It might be in a condition of the design review. Those conditions are in the packet.
Why don't the conditions follow into the code language?
The code language is only designed to get at those nuances that are above and beyond like that commercial base zone. So you have specific project conditions that are attached to the development plan, and you have code language that again deviates from the commercial zone, which is the underlying zone.
So if it's a standard code allowance, like a 10-foot setback, then that would be in a design review condition. But if you're superseding that standard code with the PD overlay and you're saying the 10 actually needs to be 15, then that's where you would find it in the PD rather than the standard condition. I think that makes sense.
Well, a standard condition is just what follows the current code.
Right. Every condition that the planning commission approves has to be rooted in the zoning ordinance. And so all of their conditions in the design review permit are rooted in either the commercial standard zone. Things that are different or supersede or above and beyond that would be in the PD overlay. So the PD overlay allows people to do things a little bit different than the standard. Just like the sign. So the sign's a good example. The PD overlay is what allows them to go to 11 feet tall. So that language has to be in the PD overlay zone.
But the moving of the green space doesn't.
No, because that is a standard open space requirement of 20% open space, and the planning commission through their design review process said it needs to go over here to be considered more usable, or they have that discretion to say, yeah, you meet the minimum, but it's not really usable because it's next to the loading dock, so put it over here where people can utilize it better.
Well, this is really confusing to me because I believe that, you've got now 2 sets of standards for one project. And if they don't follow these standards that we approve, then they have to go back to the start. But if they don't follow the other standards, they sort of can get it nuanced.
That's not really true, because on a normal project with a normal design review, if they vary, too much or significantly, then that design review becomes void and they have to start back over.
How many times has that ever happened?
Oh, several times. We've seen massive changes with projects and they start back over. L59 is one that pops in my head.
L59 was because we fought so hard about it, but, you know, I mean, I just think that.
Oftentimes you get a new owner that has a different budget or a different layout.
Well, I guess I would like to be able to say to the public, this is what we agreed to. This is what they're gonna build. Not, this is what we agreed to, but also there's this thing over here too. So that's where I'm coming, and that's where I'm getting into a little bit of a problem. I want it to be accessible for people to understand what is being built, not that they have to find it in 5 different places.
Let me interject. So when you look at the specific code amendment language, what that's doing is codifying anything that's different than the underlying base zone. So the example that Russ mentioned was the signs. The sign code says you're limited to 75 square feet, this height, this width. But what we've all agreed on in this PD process is you can go to 11 feet high, 105 square feet. So that's codified. That's what they have to build to. The conditions of approval that go with the project are also associated with that codification because it references back to that design review permit. So everything that's within that permit condition, whether it's usable outdoor space, open space, landscaping, that's still under the same vein. It's just in a different document where it's attached. Again, the code language is only for those things that are different above and beyond the underlying base zone.
I don't think there's a way to do a PD overlay and not have 2 sections of regulation. I mean, an overlay zone in and of itself is a different section. The historic overlay has different rules.
I might be beating a dead horse,
But,
as they say.
I don't know how you could do a PD overlay and have everything all in one spot. What I guess I'm trying to say.
Jeannie, is your concern regarding how the public will access the information post or during the process? Or is your concern more about moving forward, changing the process itself?
Well, this is our first rodeo for this process. So I would assume that if we changed it for this one, we would change it moving forward. What I am concerned about is that it is a little bit difficult to understand. All commercial development shall comply with the minimum development standards contained in the Land Development Code. So when we do an overlay, are we getting something more than, something better than we would have gotten otherwise, or are we just wiggling around the minimum?
Well, it depends on your definition of better than.
Yeah.
I know. I knew that. I guess I'm just
asking the question.
Yeah, I just guess I'm struggling a little bit with my initial, and it might only be in my head, is my initial concept of the overlay plan was that we were getting something that was above and beyond what could be done in the zone that the property sits in.
Yeah, so through the process, you can, if you can articulate what better than or above and beyond is. So if like in looking at their design, if there are certain design elements that you felt were important to require them to do, that's part of that negotiation process through the PD. And whatever you've articulated in terms of a design standard that we're going to apply to it, then that would be implemented or executed through that code language.
Okay.
So on this facade, say you wanted 85% fenestration or windows, that's where that language would go, would be into that code language.
But what if you were to say we want 20% more green space?
Well, if you want to increase the standard of what the code says, it's 10 and 20, so 30% for the residential and 10 and 10 for the commercial. If you're going to negotiate and require more than that language, you go into that code amendment language.
Okay, all right.
And as far as the approval, the design review is the exact same. This is what they propose and this is what we are going to permit to be built. They've shown us the materials, the heights. There isn't any like last minute changes to the project or anything. This is just the same as we do any other mixed use or multifamily project. We look at the layout, the colors, the materials. This is what they're required to submit at this phase. We don't require electrical plans or floor plans because all of that stuff comes later. But the exteriors, the colors, the layout of the site, all of that's approved, and that's all the exact same with this PD overlay process. So you can expect to see this building in this location on the site. You know, and the big box is going to sit right here, and it's going to look just like that elevation that the Planning Commission approved. So the design and the project is the same as any other. It's just there's this additional step that we're talking about right now.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
I know you've said this multiple times, but if they were to change anything from what is being proposed and being codified, then they'd have to start over.
So anything's hard to answer. Like if the structural engineer says, hey, you need to move this column 3 inches or the building's going to fall down, we allow stuff like that, right? Because they're not at that phase in the design of the construction documents. But if they said, well, you know what, our new big box is actually going to be 300,000 square feet, obviously, then we start back over. We try to allow just a little bit of wiggle room, and Tom knows this well. As you get into those detailed, construction drawings, there's sometimes some conflicts, and you need to make some slight tweaks.
So is that little bit of wiggle room, is that about function, or is that about what determines what's acceptable to change?
So it's visual. It's, does it look the same? Often it's a result of a functional code that needs to be met, whether it's a structural or electrical or mechanical code. But we look at it from a visual standpoint. The Planning Commission approved this building right here. The new one now changes that window slightly from here to there. Is that a significant enough change? So we look at it that way when we try to determine that.
So I have a question about traffic. So number 32 identified as the traffic studies completed by a third-party consultant hired by the city and paid for by the developer. The developer shall follow and be responsible for all recommendations identified in the study, either on-site or off-site. So if there's major road work that needs to be done to accommodate the traffic study, that's on the developer to pay for, the way I read that.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to, because I know traffic's been raised as a big question by the neighborhood. So if they say, yes, this corner needs, like at 14th and 2nd, that needs to be now a 5-lane intersection instead of a 4-lane intersection. How do those road improvements happen, and whose responsibility are those?
Yeah, typically on a project, the developer is responsible for the uptick in improvements. But in this case, where we may have negotiated certain improvements that we'll pay for through the RDA system, then we'll do that. But we don't know what's required yet. We think there'll be a light at the intersection 1250 and 2nd East. But we all kind of think that's what's going to happen, maybe some turn lanes.
Yeah.
But that's on Paul's back to figure out the nuances of how to pay for that, because they don't necessarily generate all the traffic that's going to trigger that. It's going to be other areas that's going to contribute to that. So they're not necessarily hooked for the entire amount, but they're responsible for a portion.
So that's my understanding, is the traffic study determines how much additional impact their project has, and then they would pay for that portion. And then the city may pay for a portion. Again, we've already got intersection improvements planned there by Culver's at 1400 North and 200 East. So, that's kind of already in the works. So again, those specific things could be addressed in a development agreement, which would come to you at a later date.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Tom's sitting over here redesigning the whole damn thing. Like, I'm like, Tom, come on, dude.
I've got a whole new layout that they're gonna love.
It's not your job, Tom.
He has some good points, though, unfortunately. He always has some good points.
Thank you, Russ.
Some good points,
Then we'd have to start over.
which you'll love.
All right, our last workshop item is budget adjustments, Resolution 23-32.
2 items to consider, both grants for the fire department. First, $9,401, a federal grant received by the fire department for wildland deployment equipment. Second item, $7,585 state grant for EMS training.
Gotta love those grants.
All right. Thank you, Rich.
No.
All right, any other, that's it for our workshop items for tonight. Any other considerations?
Mark, everyone always look at me when that question comes
I look at the 3 people over here.
Were you going to talk about public comments and your idea to switch the location of those on the agenda, or is that something?
I discussed it with Craig briefly about what was doable. In the end, we didn't conclude on any potential changes immediately.
Yeah, I mean, it's council's meeting, so you guys can choose whatever you'd like to do.
Yeah. One thing that I'd like to mention is that I think in the previous council meeting, there was a public comment, somebody brought up that asked the question if there were any Marxist individuals or affiliated with Marxist views within the council or the staff, and mentioned that we had somebody that was Marxist came to city council, and to my knowledge and others that I've asked here in the council, we have not invited anybody that is Marxist to come and express Marxist views on behalf of the council or the city. So I just wanted to mention that because to our knowledge that is not true.
I have a comment which is more cheerful than Marxist, but I was reading an article this morning where they did an analysis of what are the best counties to live in Utah. And they went through all of the counties, and Cache County was number 1. Cool.
We're number 1.
We're number 1.
There you go.
Unfortunately, that's going to bring
more people.
110,000 people. So don't tell anybody.
Well, you just did.
These are very...
On TV.
On TV.
We can try. Oh, shh.
I mean, I think it's great that we have public comment at the beginning of the meeting. We like to keep that time productive, so it's always great to hear what people's thoughts are. And sometimes we may agree with what's being said, sometimes we may not agree necessarily, but that's probably the benefit that we can express our opinions in a public meeting like this. Thank you, everyone.
Well, and we get to bring concerns. I mean, tonight we had someone bring a concern.
About a tree.
That was valid, and we had and Holly was already on a remedy. So I think those things are really important to hear.
Yes. Any other considerations or announcements? Or? All right, well, our city council meeting is adjourned, and we're reconvening for the redevelopment agency meeting. First up, we have a public hearing for resolution 23-31. Kirk.
Okay, thank you. So with the adoption of the project area plan that occurred earlier in the city council portion of the meeting, the next step in the process of breathing life, if you will, into this project area is the budget. So that's what we're going to look at tonight. And again, if someone's tuning in on TV, sounds like there might be, right, Tom? I just want to, even though we covered this in the earlier part of the meeting, that what you see on the screen is the project area map, which is centered around Cache Valley Mall, extends southward to 1000 North. So tonight, what are we looking at in Resolution 23-31 RDA? Other than noticing that's already occurred, this is really the agency's first look at the project area budget. What will not happen tonight is the RDA board, you will not vote on this resolution tonight. It's informational at this point. What precedes approval is the redevelopment agency staff going out and meeting with the taxing entities, including you as City Council of Logan, also the Logan City School District and Cache County, and presenting the budget to them, seeking their consent. Keeping in mind that consents, even at that point, is not, you're not committing tax increment at that point. It's just really approving the form of the budget, the elements, etc. But you have not until an interlocal agreement is signed, which that public hearing will come later, or at least the public meeting will come later. That is when the tax increment is actually committed by the tax entity. So this is budgetary. The good thing is it gives you a chance to ask me, any questions regarding the budget. Being a public hearing, the public also has an opportunity to provide feedback and input, so that's good. And again, approval considered at a later date. So let's just cover some of the key elements in the budget. The first one is there's always a lot of confusion and misunderstanding about what happens when you create a project area and you start talking dollars and cents. So in red, in bold put, there is no reduction to existing tax revenues for the taxing entities. So whatever Logan City School District, Cache County, and the city are receiving currently from these particular parcels in the project area, that will continue forward. There's no impact to that. So there's no taking of tax revenue or anything like that. So it might be helpful, I thought, to look at a previous example. The city has had multiple project areas over the years, as you're well aware. I selected just one here, the 600 West EDA is what we called it, a project area centered around Schreiber Foods. You can see that this project area was created or started back in 2002, 2003. At that particular time, if you look at the blue line on the far left, the total taxable value was around $20 million. So over time, what happened is that project, total taxable value grew as the objectives or the strategic objectives of the redevelopment agency were put into play in that particular area. So various things occurred, and as you can see, the total taxable value increased significantly until maturity, which was in 2016. So you can see that the value went from 20 million up to about 90 million. And the tax increment that was collectively received at the commencement of that project area was around $200,000 a year that the tax entities were receiving. At the end of that project area's life, it was $800,000. So all through those years between 2002 and 16, $200,000 was what the tax entities got. That was held harmless, right? But that additional amount, or the incremental amount, was for the most part given to the redevelopment agency in this particular project area for purposes of the RDA in this area. And then once it matured, all of that revenue, which was about 4 times, hit the tax rolls in full. So hopefully that creates a little more understanding and helps eliminate some confusion. So if we look at the 1400 North Main CRPA, the one that we're talking about tonight, this chart looks a little bit different, but again, on the far left, the trigger date for this particular project area would be 2026. You can see in that bottom left-hand corner. total taxable value going into the commencement of this project area's lifespan would be just below $50 million. And with the estimated development and redevelopment that's projected to occur at maturity, and this would be a 20-year term, out to 2045, that value would be estimated to go to about $275 million. So a significant increase, which is going to have a significant increase, obviously, on the revenues collected by the taxing entities. So aside from the held harmless provision, some of the other key elements in the budget are, I just mentioned, the term would run for 20 years. There is a revenue cap now with RDA project areas that used to be open-ended for a certain term. Now we have revenue cap, so 13 million is the cap on this. So regardless of what happens there, the RDA cannot receive any more than that $13 million. And though it is a 20-year term, if that cap is hit in year, say, 16, 17, 18, then the revenue spigot, so to speak, turns off, and all that revenue now goes to the taxing entities in full.
How's that cap determined? How is the cap determined?
It's budgetary, so through our discussions with the developer, that's proposing the Cache Valley Marketplace, that's a core of, obviously a significant core of this budget. Obviously, we have other land to the south of the Cache Valley Mall that's not developed, no plans yet. So some assumptions were made to project what level of development may occur there and what the resulting revenue might be.
Again, the cap will be in a kind of a final development agreement that comes back for your approval as a board.
But the cap is, the state's the one that has said there has to be caps, right?
Yeah, there's state statute that requires caps.
State statute requires a cap.
Does the state require that it cannot be any more than a specific percentage?
I don't think they dictate. I'd have to check with Kimber and Craig. I don't believe they specify percentages. They just say you have to establish a cap. So that's really, as I understand it, mutually agreed upon between all of the taxing entities and then the redevelopment agency of Logan City. Also, revenues and expenditures obviously are included in the budget. Some other key elements. With any project area, you have affordable housing reserves that have to be set aside. When you're creating new property tax, 10% of those have to be set aside for affordable housing projects that would occur somewhere in Logan City. So in this particular budget, what is being proposed is the reinvestment of those affordable housing reserves back into the projects that will occur within the project area. Also, on hand, the RDA has affordable housing reserves of $500,000. Those are also proposed to be put into this budget and to be paid to developers. Private developer incentives, and this is aside from the tax increment that would be, private developer incentives, 10.5 million. That does not include affordable housing reserves, so that's a separate component. RDA administration, obviously built within the budget, are a certain amount of funds to fund the 20 years that the RDA has to manage this. And so you'll see that in the budget that you've received. There's also a line item for transportation infrastructure. So it's become pretty obvious that as we look at the new daily trips that will occur, particularly with the Cache Valley Mall redevelopment, that the traffic counts are going to go up. And so this line item of $500,000 is really intended to assist with the cost that would be faced by the city and the developer to some extent to put in a traffic signal at the intersection of 200 East and Cache Valley Boulevard. In terms of new development that is assumed and shown here in the budget, you've got the Cache Valley Marketplace investment, which is projected to be a $205 million project. And then we're projecting other development or redevelopment of $35 million elsewhere in the project area over that 20-year time span. Logan City it's proposed that Logan City will assist. Now, granted, the lion's share of that will come through the tax increment and the affordable housing reserves, but also there will be some other contributions made by the city to include, permitting and fee waivers, that sort of thing. And then also the $500,000 of existing affordable housing reserves that I referred to earlier. And I covered this in the earlier presentation on the project area plan, but the purposes, justifications for some of those public assistance dollars are these that you see on the screen: demolition, public infrastructure, on-site upgrades, the traffic signal would be one of those, etc. So, projected agency expenditures over the 20-year time horizon would be $13.5 million. These are just the RDA-related portion. Public benefits, I ran through those. I won't read them, but you can look at those on your screen. It's the same ones that I indicated in the earlier presentation. I will say, regarding all of the city's contributions, be it RDA or waived permitting fees, that sort of thing, that will all, even when you approve the budget, you're not approving that yet. So following the budget meetings, then comes the interlocal agreement meetings, and finally comes the development agreement meeting, which spells out the specific agreements being made between the redevelopment agency and the developer in terms of all those forms of assistance, what our obligations are, what their obligations are, and so forth. And I referred to this earlier too, the estimated tax base impact, and this is ignoring the sales tax lift, but on the property tax side, the taxing entities would receive another $735,000 each and every year. So that's about 176%
in today's
increase.
In today's dollars.
In today's dollars, right. There was a question raised about what's the relationship between the proposed incentive of a particular project and the value of the total project cost. Some examples that we've seen before. So I could certainly list more, but I just listed some that we're familiar with, and I put those here. So the Logan Gateway project that's the South Main project where you have Adams Wealth Advisors, all those retail buildings with restaurants in them. The relationship between incentive and total project cost is about 12.5%. Logan River Business Park, that's actually the Riverwoods project. Actually, that's phase 1. I didn't list phase 2 here. I could certainly, go back and calculate that, but phase 1, which included the Wasatch Properties headquarter building, the parking structure, all the retail buildings associated with that, the conference center, Elements Restaurant, 10.4% is the ratio there. So looking at the lower part of the screen, within the entire project area that we're looking at tonight, that estimated ratio is 5.4%. If you look at just the mall redevelopment project in and of itself, that's 5.7%, a little bit higher. And even if you were to factor in the other city assistance, then you're up to about 7.6%. But again, that's ignoring sales tax. So I just provided those as kind of a barometer, if you will, comparison. So that's what I have for you tonight. So if you have any questions, just fire away.
Thank you for adding that extra information there.
You bet.
Any questions for Kirk?
You were so thorough, I have no question.
Got most of my questions answered before this meeting.
All right. This is a public hearing. If you'd like to comment on this specific item for our last item for tonight, please come up to the mic and state your name and your place of residence, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Good evening, Joel Nelson, Adams neighborhood, specifically on just off of 200 East and 1100 North. So I was just trying to get to this as relevant tonight. And get back to my timer, I will attempt to keep this under 3 minutes. So I'm going to look down a little bit, I apologize. So the budgetary boundaries look good. Thank you for the report, your staff, and then of course for you guys working through all of this. Given the RDA can continue to represent the healthiest interests of local businesses, neighborhoods, communities in the city, within these budgetary boundaries, and under Mike DeSimone's ideas tonight saying, you know, we're here to try to really understand the ideas, good or bad, about what we're looking into. From the neighborhood and my perspective and my wife's perspective, we hope in this RDA budgetary area that healthy community spaces can continually be encouraged to be rebuilt. And the reason I say rebuilt is because, yeah, we recognize that the mall is going to go away. It had spaces for people, you know, ourselves and others in the city, and we're just really trying to find a way of looking forward through these public processes of encouraging this particular location to have healthy community spaces that can come back in. So thank you for your time tonight, and we appreciate looking forward to interacting with this project more and more.
Thank you.
Blake Cameron, one of the owners of Aspen Dental that sits on one of the outlying parcels of the Cache Valley Mall project. Had a chance to speak with Kirk, had a chance to speak with the Planning Commission. Wondering in the budgetary process, looking at all these numbers that for someone with a small business is just kind of mind-blowing. Wondering if it's possible to get specifics on how this project moves forward without financial harm to the outlying businesses. Specifically where we're being told we'll have to relocate everything with our parking facilities and where our dumpster goes, and that's all on us, while the project gets lots of incentives to build what they want, where they want. I don't know, honestly, where to address this. But Kirk has said he's willing to chat with me and figure out what all this means, but mostly from the budget standpoint, wondering whether all of these numbers and incentives floating around, is there a way to ensure that the developer doesn't harm the outlying businesses in creating their new space. So, thank you for your help.
What's the address of your business again?
It's 170 East, 1400 North.
Thank you.
We face 14th, and that building 4, that apartment building, will block our access to our parking lot and our dumpster. So,
thank you for your comment. Kirk, is there anything you'd like to mention on this? Okay. Anyone else that would like to comment on this specific item?
Hi, how are you? Does somebody have a timer? Because I don't. My name is Katie. I'm Katie Ray. I'm in Adams Park. I just have some notes on my phone that I've accumulated as I've been listening to some of the discussion. So it was mentioned earlier that Cache County is like the #1 place in Utah, I suppose, to live. It won't be if things like this are allowed to be built. I think we can all agree that something needs to happen with the mall. It's never really been successful and it's ugly. I have lived all over the country. I'm a native Texan. I grew up in Austin. I had to leave because of the California invasion. I moved to Boise, Idaho. Kind of saw what was on the table there and what was to come. East Coast, DC, also Las Vegas. I guess I'm just really kind of amazed at the lack of inspiration that this development has, especially that it contains. I was watching everyone's faces up here while everybody was talking about it and while the presentation was taking place, and I have to say, none of you looked particularly inspired by this. I certainly wasn't. I thought that the renderings looked like some of the dorms that they just built up at the college. And I've lived all over the place, and I've seen mixed-use developments and, you know, beautiful green space where people can come together, you know, with big box stores in it and with homes and beautiful condos above retail space. You know, you can be in your condo upstairs and go down and get a coffee, you know, or something. It seems kind of strange to me to be out in my bikini, chilling in the pool, looking out on 200 at Culver's, you know, and checking out the loading dock while I'm taking my beautiful dog out to go hang out in that dog park. I just think a little bit more thought and imagination and care should be taken when trying to put a gigantic development like this at major taxpayer expense in the middle of the busiest intersection in the entire city. I just think it should look beautiful. It should be a plan to have it be lasting. Maybe have it where those eventually turn into condos that are for sale instead of just apartments, you know, like some long-term outlook. That rendering just looks like it is not designed around people. It's designed around profits. And I suppose, in summary, if we all wanted to live in Ogden, we'd just move to Ogden. But the way this is going, it just kind of seems like it's going to be the beginning of turning this beautiful place that we all love, that was once affordable to live. Because I'm telling you, I mean, I work on the East Coast in DC. The housing prices there, it's like it's the same thing. The only thing that's maybe a little better are the property taxes for now.
Utilities.
Yeah, so,
Utilities are up.
you know, I just think some more long-term thought, and we shouldn't let these developers come in and just take money from us and just build something and be like, oh, here's a little throwback. You know, maybe over time, here's some revenue that you can get and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I just want to say I would like it if some more thought and maybe some planning could go into it where it would look beautiful instead of just some other tear-down thing that's going to be like so much of the other stuff that's being slapped up around this valley. So that's my big concern. I don't think we can fight the growth that's coming. I just think it needs to be quality, good, beautiful stuff, much like the Adams Park neighborhood where those homes have been around for a long time. Let's plan to build something that can be beautiful forever.
Looks like the time's up, but
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else that would like to comment on this item?
Hello, everyone. My name's Donna Berry. I know our heads hurt tonight. My brain does. I want to reiterate what Katie said. I live in Adams neighborhood, and I think the pit that is in everyone's stomach in Adams is the fact that it feels like Adams is just being sacrificed. We are talking about 346 more apartments right up on 2nd East. I was at the Planning Commission meeting. It is not that I did not hear, and Mike was there too, I did not hear that we went from 10-foot setback to 15. I heard that we went from 20 to 15. And it was discussed that a building 4 feet tall should be 40 feet setback at one point. So I understand that all of the traffic that goes up and down 2nd East now has to stop at a light at 1250 and the roundabout, and that's going to block, that's going to back up and back up. So I lost my train of thought here, but we are talking at least, 600 more cars that live there in that development. A mall has hours, cars come and go and the mall closes. So we've never had a situation like this before in Adams. And what do you do? I mean, Main Street is crowded, 1400 is crowded. 2nd East is 2 lanes. What do you do with those cars that are there permanently? I understand there's a traffic study that's coming and they have to pay for that, and there's but getting to the setback, and I don't know how long I've gone, I'm probably about at the end of my time, but a 15-foot setback with apartments right on 2nd East, people are looking right out onto 2nd East where they're living. So as this thing gets rezoned, I know you've got to think about this, and I'll get back to the point. You have to decide whether it's commercial, it changes from commercial to the overlay, is what I'm understanding. I mean, I know you deal with this every day. I'm sitting in here for a few hours listening to it and reading what I can. So I'm a little unsure what I'm talking about there or what you have to vote on. But when you allow 4-story apartments, 326 units at the intersection of 2nd East and 1400, I think that's just the beginning of the end for Adams. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Last chance, anyone wants to come up? All right, we'll bring it back to the council.
We're not voting.
Yeah, it's got to go to the other entities, so.
All right. So we're,
Just close the public hearing and then
all
we're.
right, well, we're closing the public hearing at this point. I want to thank everyone that has been part of this process and that continues to be engaged. I mean, staying here till late, we appreciate your attendance and your opinions. Thank you for being here. And I'd say, even though at times things don't go exactly how you wish, your input does influence how things are changing and evolving in this project. So thank you. Thank you for that. And we're adjourned.